Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me, as he always does, is Duncan Thorin Shields. Sam's pressing the buttons. And just before we even start the show, I do want to say, as you can see, I've moved house. I'm in an empty room, essentially. I'm in an empty fucking house, sleeping on an airbed. I've described my life at the moment. It's like being a heroin addict without the fun of the heroin. I'm just sleeping in an airbed in an empty room.
Like 15 years, haven't you?
Yeah, basically,
Full circle.
Some would say complete rock bottom, which fantastic. But just because of that, we are on. I'm on like a hotspot, a public hotspot at the moment. It's the only internet access I have, so I'll prepare everyone in advance. I will almost certainly drop from the call, probably at a crucial moment, just before one of Thorin's is the thing, or whatever it is. So when that happens, it's just the price. It was that, and do a show or wait another fucking week or something until my internet gets installed in this house. So just want to prepare everybody for that. Obviously, there's been loads of drama as well, loads of stuff to talk about. So we felt like compelled to do a show as quickly as possible. So if the quality's bad, don't shout at Sam. It's not Sam. It's me. It's my internet. And obviously as well...
There are so many massive drama bombs that we've missed. Like, we picked the worst week and a half ever to not have a show. Like, mate, we missed all the Brazilian stuff, all the shit with, like... I mean, we can go through some of it. Like, Device just going on HLTV, Org having a massive lie about every single thing he was asked about. Like, there's so much drama we can go over.
Yeah, well, so first, I'll just give a shout-out to the sponsor, .com. Obviously, they've been sponsoring us for a long time now. I'm sure you know who they are, but if you don't, they're an esports betting platform where you can go place bets on esports events in a safe, ethical environment. You actually get your winnings. They do all sorts of cool stuff. They've even expanded their betting into, you can do it for your favorite streamers now. You can find out all about that if you type, I can't even remember what the buzzword is, but exclamation point something. Sam knows, but you can also find it on my panel down there, learn more about it, and basically support them because they support us. So, right, let's do it then. Fuck it. Yes, a lot of drama bombs were deployed in the time that I was away, praying that my furniture is going to make it across the high fucking seas, which at the moment, I also want to say, it's not even on the boat yet, my stuff, by the way. So I'm going to be in this empty room for a fucking long time. I feel like I'm doing a Russ Cole speech at the moment. Like, I'm locked in an empty room, having a dream about being a person. Like, all that stuff.
The last few months with a dream, exactly.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Living in Vegas.
Richard.
Yeah, 5-bedroom mansion, all gone now. All gone, back to Britain.
By the way, I have a question about that, because you've only hinted at it on Twitter. Are you at some point in time going to tell the story of what happened with that last company you were working with? Because I didn't even know what stream it was, mate.
Put it this way, right? They fucked me so bad. I got a phone call from Gaules, and he said, that gape's outrageous, son. You take the crown. That's what he said. I was like, well, yeah, fucking got me there, Gaules. I can't hold the shit in. My spine fell out. It's fucking unreal. So just to put it in context, like, long story short, and I will go into details. When I was at WSOE, a lot of people have made the assumption it was WSOE, the
right.
World
I was
Showdown
wondering
of
if it was,
esports. Not them. Great guys, great company to work for. Had a lot of fun with them. Was on a very lucrative contract, and they treated me incredibly well. And I loved working with them, and I still consider them friends. It wasn't like an acrimonious split or whatever. But basically, they were in the process of downsizing a little bit, and I was gonna be put on some projects that weren't particularly appealing, if I'm being honest about it. And I had a clause in my contract that I could get out and basically get like a golden handshake on the way out. And there was other factors in my life that made that appealing. So I said, fuck it, I'll take that deal. And then obviously the world was my oyster. I had interviews with some big esports orgs to maybe go be a general manager. I had publications reaching out asking if I wanted to be an editor. Lots of offers on the table, and a startup came to me and said, hey, we want to make a journalism like community platform.
Right, I think I remember this.
Yeah, well, I'll talk to you about it. And basically, we want to be like the Vice of esports, and we'll give you a huge budget, and you can go out and hire what you want, make whatever content you want, monetize it how you want. You'll be completely in charge of it, and all you need to do is integrate our tournament platform somewhere into it and figure it out. And I was like, oh, right, fine. How much are we going to pay? 6-figure salary, of course, because we're a startup and we're going to go out and raise money. Having you involved in the company gives us that credibility to go out and say, look, we're not like all these other fly-by-night companies. We've got a legit esports dude working for us. We might be able to raise money against your name. So we all had verbal handshakes. I even had a friend who worked in the company and invested in the company. So I thought, well, this is legit, right? And I've done, E-League was a startup. People don't realize that aspect of it. E-League was essentially a separate startup within Turner. It was run separately. It had its own budget essentially, and it was expected that it was going to have to turn a profit at some point, or they could even, if it didn't work out, they might sell the brand. So anyone who's worked in startups will tell you, startups are the most stressful fucking thing because you're literally building from scratch. WSOE was a startup. So I was like, right, I'm getting all geared up to do another startup. This will be my last 6-figure salary, but fuck it. We'll make the money. We'll build something big, and then I'm going to retire afterwards. Probably retire from esports and write a book and put my feet up. So we agree it all. We all do a handshake, and I turn down every other offer, and they go out and they get me a visa. Now, you might have heard of a guy called Donald Trump. Have you ever heard of him, Duncan?
I think someone once compared me to him. I haven't looked into this fellow, though.
Yeah. Well, he's a guy, right? Like he got elected to be the president, and I've read various things about him in the media, a lot of which aren't true,
As I can tell, a lot of people low key really like him because as long as he exists, they can blame every single thing in the world on this one guy. He seems to be the most powerful human to have ever lived, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, he's sort of like an orange Dr. Manhattan, isn't he?
Feels like, yeah, exactly.
Just with a much smaller penis, if court documents are to be believed. But anyway, so one thing that he's done that obviously has fucked everyone up in esports and just business in general is that he's made sweeping reforms to get in visas and stuff like this.
It's even fucked me again, mate. And everyone I know.
Yeah, right.
Request for evidence, isn't it? You just get that a million times.
Yes. So what happened was while I agreed to, in principle, to work for this startup, all exceptional persons visas now get RFE'd, and that's a request for further evidence.
I had the same thing myself this year.
Yeah. So basically what happens is, for those who've never gone through the visa process, the company has to basically get a lawyer. It costs $10,000 approximately if you're with a good law firm to basically file for an exceptional person's visa, where they take all the aspects of your life and present a compelling argument that you are indeed an exceptional person. Now, I don't know. You can tell they're very good lawyers, because if you can make that argument about me, you're worth your weight in gold. But they managed to do it, right? They and I've had 2 or 3, I think it is now. But for this one, they basically RFE'd me. I've never even been RFE'd before because I've had 3. They used to go through quick, but with these reforms, it's now mandatory that they're RFE'd. So we have to send in more evidence. Then it gets delayed. Then because of other things that were going on and other reforms that were coming in, because they were changing the way that the HB1 visas work and stuff, it got delayed. So all told, the visa process took something like 5 fucking months just to get a visa I already had in my previous line of work.
By the way, just as an aside, like one thing I think that would, if people who are American who don't realize what a big deal this is, I'll just give you this example, right? It was already hard to get an American visa, just like it is to get a British visa if you want to go there, because understandably, in theory, they are super picky about who they let in. They're not just letting in anyone, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about where me and Richard have applied for legit visas, ones we've even had in the past and proven it. But in this scenario, essentially, this is almost like, I'm not exaggerating, like corrupt former Soviet bloc levels of how you apply for visas, where it is intentionally pretending that you don't have the information so that you pay an enormous fee and apply again. And as opposed to just saying we only want to let in X amount of people, you just cynically use an algorithm and go, right, if we fuck up enough visa applications, do we get it down to the number we want? Like, we used to hear stories back in the day in esports, like Russia was like a classic example where, you know, 5 players from a CS team would apply to go to America, 4 of them would get the visa, the 5th one for no reason wouldn't, and they'd be using the manager or a stand-in as the 5th guy, and famously, you didn't have time to apply again. That's where America's at right now. I've had the same thing happen to me, where when I applied for the visa, the amount of time it would have took to do the RFE meant I would have missed the event I wanted to go to. So they were like, this is like, if people don't get how bad this isn't like a minor, like, they fucked up what they've done. This is a feature, not a bug. They've actually taken you guys to the level, without getting into politics, of like a corrupt country in terms of how this process works. It's actually very sad. I don't know what the situation is for the UK, so I won't speak on that. Maybe it's as bad there, I don't know. But this is pretty bad for everyone in esports.
And Q, everyone saying, that's what you get for supporting Donald Trump.
I missed when I did that. People keep telling me, but I've never seen anything. Don't know when I did it.
Yeah, me either. I think there's that one picture of us raising drinks to the words Hillary Clinton loses election in the background, which
is a perfectly legitimate statement in its own right, without any other context necessary.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, to be fair, I mean, Hillary Clinton, she would have fucked up the planet in totally different ways.
There'd be a war with like 3 other countries down there.
Yeah, but at least I'd have my visa. So, so fuck all them dead people. So yeah. You know, you gotta weigh it up, Doug. You gotta weigh it up. Human life, getting what I want. You know, it's a complicated algorithm I have to work in my head. But anyway, so ignoring all that for a moment. Bottom line, I got RFE'd. It dragged on, and then it came through. I got my visa, and then the company were like, "Yeah, well, don't really. It's been 5 months now, so I just don't think we even want to hire you still." And I went, "But
this was like the reason to renege on you, basically."
Yeah, I said, but the visa's just cleared, so like you have hired me. It's not an optional thing at this point. Yeah. We've entered into a contract. So then, long story short, because this intro's already gone on a while, just talking about myself, full narcissism. Mind you, there's no one left in esports, is there? I might be the last of them.
Exactly.
Maybe, who knows? All the rest.
We won't even have any stories, isn't it? Because all the stories, remember when? Redacted. No. Not personally.
Yeah, exactly. Rest of them have all been fucking memory hold and whatever. But anyway, so long story short, they then said, well, listen, you know, you need your visa if you want to stay here. So we'll have to renegotiate. So they changed my job title. They then didn't want to do the project. They said, oh, we just don't have enough money to do the project we promised you we'd do. So we'll take you on in this role. Then they didn't want to take me on in that role. And they were haggling me down to the point where, like, just to keep my visa, I would have had to not only accept money where I could have literally made more washing cars, right? But also I would have to sign a non-compete. So I wouldn't be able to work in esports again for a salary that is literally less than a McDonald's job. So I just told them, stick it up your ass. I went to a lawyer. I got one of my high-powered attorneys involved because I've met a lot of them down the years and they all like me. And basically sat down with a guy who's an expert in contract and employment law. And he said, oh, you'll get them. But if their plan is to essentially liquidate anyway as soon as they run out of money or don't make funding, what do you really win? You get a W next to your name in court. You still don't have your visa. They're not legally obliged to pay you any damages because they liquidate immediately. So he said, I'll do it for you, but it is a waste of your time and you're better off just cutting your losses. So in the end, they told me they were going to liquidate. I don't know if they have yet or whatever, because we just ended all communications. And I had, at that point, when I got the final email of their intention to fold, I just had 60 days to get out of America to be in compliance with my visa. So if I ever wanted to go back on an ESTA or anything like that, I could at least get back into the country. So that's where I was at. So I had 60 days while obviously dealing with like a horrendous bereavement and a global pandemic to get back to Britain. So yeah, super mega stressful time. just more adventures in esports. I mean, basically, I'm going to write an article sort of going into more detail about it.
All right.
But you're never too old to get scammed in this business. Never. No. You're never too old. You're never too wise. You're never too smart. They'll always.
I'd even also warn people, like one of the key lessons to learn from this is the latter part, which is this isn't just like a movie where you, like everyone's heard the story, right? Where the famous example is people purposely hire undocumented workers in America because one of the ways you can overwork them is you can always just threaten, like, I'll turn you in, I'll get you kicked out of the country tomorrow. People don't get it with the way that the current rules work for renewing visas and how you have to literally leave the country within something mental like 30 days if they kick you out your job. Everyone who's in America on visas is now in that scenario. So in esports, a corrupt business, you can now have a company come to you and just say, you're either taking a pay cut or you're doing all this extra stuff, or you know what, just on my own whim, I'm just going to play God with your life and your career. And if you don't like it, you better be able to get out of that contract you got on your house in 30 days. You better be able to sell the house. You better be able to get a new place. You better be able to afford to move all your shit to whatever country you come from. So I would just say be very wary about moving to America on visas at the moment. Like, it's really tenuous, like fucking, it's like trying to keep a million plates spinning at once. Like, if any of them come down, you're in deep shit, unfortunately.
I got super lucky with that because my landlady was, she was a little old religious lady, and she didn't want me to move in at first. I don't think she was worried what, like, a single British guy moving to Vegas and living in a big house, what was he gonna do? You know, like, was he gonna party? Was he wild? She only actually, I think, was swayed at the idea of taking me over because I think her daughter showed her E-League and said, look, he used to be on the telly, so you can't be that much of a nutter. Wrong. But anyway, like, we grew to really, really like each other. And basically when it was time to renew my contract, that I was going to have like 2 months where I just couldn't, like, it was either signed for a year or live in a hotel for 2 months, somehow put all my stuff in storage. So I was looking at, like, a logistical nightmare, and she just said, like, oh, Richard, don't worry about it. Like, here's a 2-month extension. We'll do anything to help you out during this time. Yeah, so she was super cool. She sent me I wish I should have brought it up. She sent me this mad, because she's an old lady, she's got that mad spidery handwriting, you know, from, like, whenever the fuck. She sent me this mad letter saying life's testing you right now, but God is great. God loves you. You're gonna be okay. You're a great guy. Like, I was like, I've kept that letter in my wallet. She was super cool. It was like I probably couldn't have got through everything I've gone through lately without her. But obviously, as we know, most landlords aren't like that. Most landlords are bloodthirsty, vicious bastards that would see you in the streets. So again, I've been blessed in some ways. I shouldn't bellyache too much about my situation. So anyway, there it is. That's what's been going on with me. But that's not the drama we want to talk about. My life's always a drama. It's a drunken cavalcade of bad decisions and horror-themed T-shirts. Let's talk about the real horror that's sweeping the Counter-Strike scene right now. It is, of course, Gaules and his goons. The Brazilian harassment train, which we saw reach unparalleled and unprecedented heights regarding an incident where Chaos, which you might know as Steel's team, they weren't playing with Steel in this instance because it was the road to one of the regional qualifiers. RMR for Rio. Chaos beat mibr with Leaf, a young player having a very good game, and let's be real about it, a few clips that looked weird.
For someone looked a bit weird. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, right. And what happened while that was going on, the official Brazilian broadcast partner and one of the top streamers on Twitch, Gaules, diverted the broadcast and the post broadcast to break down clips of him and basically say this is cheating, which then snowballed out of control. Even Tarek tweeted saying, yeah, those clips are suspicious. Fallen tweeted it out. And basically, you've now had a 16-year-old kid who had to, like, temporarily deactivate Twitter because of the sheer fucking volume of threats and death threats and abuse he was getting. And it's probably one of the most disgraceful things I've seen in Counter-Strike for a couple of years.
Yeah, also, I want to say, like, right at the very beginning, just even though it won't help, because it's like one of the reasons I always think campaigns and stuff online are so worthless. It's like the person who you actually want to read that and change their behavior isn't going to fucking read your tweet and do what you say, you idiot. Like, this is just howling in the wind. So I'll say it anyway for the sake of the few reasonable people who might be listening. This discussion has nothing to do with whether that player cheated or not. It's not even about whether any of the clips look dodgy. It's about the responsibility of being a major figure in the scene and then making direct accusations that the person cheats. And you know what? Of all the offenders in this story, I even think Tarek's is a good example to give, because if you saw his response, he just didn't think whatsoever when the way he tweeted it. Like, what he was trying to do is actually what you're allowed to do to some degree, which is say that looked a bit dodgy, but don't say that they're definitely cheating, right? Now, the way he phrased it, I'm sure he regrets now, because he realizes now with the follow-up from Fallen and all the others, he's being tarred as saying the guy cheated outright and basically like just accusing him. So the point is not whether the clips look dodgy. Because, for example, I saw the usual parade of clowns come out and say things like, but it can't be a name lock because it wasn't on the guy's head. It's like, why are you talking about cheats if you believe that cheats lock onto the guy's head in 2020? I did videos back in, like, I think 2016 where I explained there's like offset commands.
Yeah, they don't know what an offset is. Yeah.
There's a million factors that would be involved with the modern cheats that make it, like, basically, if you don't know about them, it's not really worth proffer an opinion, because you'll think you know what you're talking about, but you don't. Like, I wouldn't say I know about it. So all I can say is I agree with you. This is where people think I'm just bantering when I say that famous line I always say about Flusher, where I say you will never find a video where I said Flusher cheated. Because here's how I explain it. I don't know that he cheated. I have no proof that he cheated. I just think that he probably did. And if you think that that's like if you think I'm doing that to be coy, I'm not. I'm actually trying to be extremely responsible when I say that. Because at the end of the day, even if it turned out that I could somehow prove he didn't cheat, it wouldn't change the fact that to me the clips look dodgy. I'm allowed to say that, but you have to be very careful how you say that. And the problem in this scenario was whether the guy cheated or not, inarguably, everyone just turned on this fucking guy and gave him loads of abuse that he didn't need.
Yeah, and let's be real, Sam, I don't know if you can actually dig out the clips and show them while we're just talking, if you can. Yeah, have at it. If not, no big deal. Just play them as well without sound. Let's talk first of all about gaslighting. And I know it's one of your favorite words that's entered your lexicon. I think it's a shame that the people that have a tendency to use that word are generally utter cunts with worthless opinions. Yes. Because it is actually a great term and a great concept. Yeah, and it references a play from like the 30s, and it's a shame. It's a shame. It's been co-opted by pricks, but whatever. But there was a degree of gaslighting going on. I mean, the first thing was I actually saw people on Twitter, on Reddit, saying, yeah, but this kid, he had more clips in that series than Flusher had in his whole career.
No way.
Which is an objective lie. And the way that lie was repeated, again, I don't want to talk about it too much with everything that's been going on, and I did just write an article about the importance of looking after your mental health. But unfortunately, we are going to find out in 5 years that one of the reasons why so many social issues are masquerading as social issues, but they're really mass psychosis, social media does it again. You see a lie, you want to get involved, you want to be on the right side, you repeat the lie, you join in, the lie's compounded by everyone else saying it, and it's like a cult ritual where everyone's chanting and believing the same stuff, but it's completely divorced from reality, and no one has the courage to break the spell and go, yeah, you're all talking shit there, because the penalty for doing that is a direct invasion into the positive world of your mental health.
By the way,
people will come at you, people will threaten you.
Just as an aside as well, I'll even say, if you ever look into this, because like, I know you've read some of this stuff, if you ever read like studies that the police have done about how unreliable people's memories are of incidents happening, where like basically it's the reason why you can't allow corrupt police people to coach you in the interview. They can just make you, no joke, actually think you remember something that didn't happen. So the reason I'm bringing this up is when people repeat the things that they themselves never saw, but they heard from another person. This happens to me and you all the time with our reputations. Eventually, that will become real in people's minds. That they will now have a memory of an incident. Like the most famous one ever, right, is you'll probably see many times when people bring up me ranting about Poland. They say I did it on the desk of the event in Poland.
Yeah.
Like their brains created a memory that is so outrageous. It never even vaguely happened. Like I was never even on the stage in Poland. I never made it that far. Like, but that's an example where people's brains have like overwritten themselves so many times that the junk data is now like they think the real important shit. It's a real phenomenon, I think.
And mate, like you're talking to the king of those. I probably got more than you. You know, do you remember pulling me off loader, mate? Do you remember? The whole thing's ridiculous, and it happens all the time. And the social media is essentially a consensus machine. It rewards consensus. All of them do. Or every platform, not just Reddit. And Twitter does it. Instagram does it. It's about likes. It's about approval. And therefore, when a lie gains traction and it becomes popular, people fucking repeat the lie because the lie is positively reinforced by other people that want to be involved, want to be on your side, and know that repeating that lie is a surefire way to get that approval. So I saw people saying to me, like, oh, you had more clips than Flusher. Loads of people tweeted at me. By the way, my policy now is if you're a Brazilian and you message me telling me that I should be using my time to investigate Leaf, who is the most egregious cheater of all time, you're just instantly blocked. Like, you will never have a worthwhile thought in your head that I want to hear. You're mad. You're fundamentally mad. So, and I got that a lot. I probably blocked about 300 Brazilian people telling me shit like that. So anyway, let's get back on point. There were 2 clips in the series that were dodgy. There was the one on Dust 2, where he was in that 1v1. And it did that. Wait, was this even Leaf, actually?
From what I remember, the 2 I remember that were really famous is one was on Overpass. He was going into Monster, and it basically looked like he sort of semi-locked onto, I think it was Taco, who was like up into the right.
Yeah, who was up there above, in the window.
There was also one on Inferno where I think he's coming out of like the balcony onto the A site, and I think it is behind the wall, like on the balcony area in that like off angle you take, and he just sort of seems as though he just sort of looks at him the whole time. But again, it's one of those ones where it's like, I mean,
so I was thinking of the Zeppa. I was thinking of the Zeppa clip.
He also got accused at the same time.
He also got accused.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So basically, when you look at those 2 clips, they're not even really that bad. They're not like insane Flusher levels of bad. Yeah, they're mild. Remember as well, right? The things that go on in CS when you're talking about Go TV, like, mate, I don't. How many times are people gonna have to make videos about how like what you see on your screen isn't even what people playing in the game with you see on their screen? There's all sorts going on. Interpolate commands. The way Go TV is an algorithmic recreation of the game, not the game itself. As you experience,
would understand, as I pointed out on Twitter. Come on, mate.
Which will
your ass.
Yeah, which we'll get to that in a second. But basically, those clips were not all that bad. They were not insanely bad.
Nobody, I'm being serious. Nobody who is an expert about Counter-Strike could say from those clips alone conclusively that the guy cheats. The best you could say is that looks weird, or I'd like an explanation for that. You couldn't, like, these weren't on the level where you could say the guy definitely cheated. Like that is a nonsense idea, because the reason why that tilted me that you had top pros doing it is, mate, if we can take the nameplates off, I promise you I can show you clips of the best players in the world that look insane. Like, if people don't know, I'll just update people for where the world's at. Because I always check in on these other communities to see if they ever have a good point, right? The community of people who believe there are really serious top pros cheating. This is where they're at right now, guys. So understand if you think you're going to their side. I'm known as someone who's quite skeptical about the idea there's no cheaters. I think there probably are a couple. I think at a very minimum, there are even pros that online are straight mustard, but online they cheat to get through the qualifier. I think there's a lot of reasons and incentives and ways you could get around it, right? That means that there could be a small niche percentage of pro players that cheat. But the people who are in the community who believe there are hardcore cheaters and expose cheaters, they say, literally believe, I'm about to state a fact here that they believe that Simple cheats on every single mouse click. I am not exaggerating at all. They have found movements they claim are proof of aimbot. And as a result, think how amazing Simple is. They literally claim every AWP shot he fires that the reason it doesn't shake is he is cheating. So they're not just saying, guys, if you find the odd weird clip, they're not in your camp. If you think that, you're not a totally unreasonable person. You can ask questions. The people who believe in the cheating law believe Simple is cheating every time he presses mouse 1. That's how far it's gone. So I don't want people to think we're ignoring the premise that people could cheat. Definitely not. But I'll just say it. Be careful what camp you put yourself in on that one.
Yeah. So the clips weren't that bad in the grand scheme of things. You wouldn't even back in the day when we did ban people from through demo, which obviously was before CSGO. These wouldn't have even been considered passable back in the source days or the 1.6 days. It just wouldn't be anything close to enough. So, Fallen, right? Of all the people you would think that would understand what it's like to go through a cheating storm, you would think he would get it. And this is what I mean about mibr. First of all, the hubris to believe for a second a team needs to cheat to beat you. Get your fucking head out your ass. What universe are you living in? It ain't 2017 no more, motherfucker. Right? And it hasn't been for a long time. The idea that the ragtag mixer players playing without their star player still couldn't take a map off you, still couldn't push you close. Have you not been watching mibr the last fucking, however many months, however many years it's been? Since you went to mibr, you have all been a shadow of yourselves. You've not been able to maintain a consistent 5. Better players couldn't dig you out. People like Phelps, they go away, the gangbusters, they come into your team. Somehow they can't fit into the system. You, in your mind, Fallen in particular, but obviously it applies to fucking KNG and Taco and Fur. They've all got the same arrogance problem. You don't realize it anymore, but you are ordinary. Individually, you might not be. But when you come together, it's not like fucking Captain Planet putting the power rings together or fucking Voltron. You're just shit together. You're just shit together, and people can beat you. You are mortal. So the audacity to imply,
and by the way, in this era, let's be real. In Europe at the moment, we have teams that weren't even top 10 who beat the best teams in Europe. Like, it's not like this is unusual. This online era has everyone getting rocked by unknown teams. Like, that's the craziest part. They picked
bigger than number 1 team in the fucking world.
Yeah, the dumbest time ever to take this angle.
Yeah, completely insane. So anyway, that's point 1. But then point 2, does anyone remember what it was like when they came from nowhere and started dominating? Brazilians, good at Counter-Strike, impossible. Coldzera, never heard of him. No pedigree, no background, best player in the world, 2 years running. They must be cheating. They must be on the gear. Clip after clip after clip after clip.
Yeah.
And the mad thing about this is that, right, I saw people trying to, they can't even understand basic premises. I tweeted out to Fallen, look at this, and it was like clips of him allegedly cheating. And then someone said, well, you can't compare that because that's offline, that's at LAN. You're the same dickheads who've been telling me for fucking the past 2 years that I'm wrong because you say cheating at LAN is not just possible, it's easy. Because no one cares and it's all one big scam. So the people who've been trying to mind fuck me into that way of thinking are now saying, oh yeah, but look, Fallen couldn't have been cheating back then on LAN. Which one is it? And forget that anyway. It's irrelevant where it took place. The Brazilian players were accused relentlessly. Remember when Taco was dog shit? Remember when he was absolute dog shit and then from nowhere he was hands down a top 5 player in the world, just smashing everyone's head off. People couldn't figure it out. You don't just change roles and get that good. People peddled the narrative. He must have been on the gear. Of course he's on the gear. All the Brazilians are on the gear. They're all cheating. Remember that scout clip of Fallen where it does that incredible robotic right angle? That can't just be Go TV. They're cheating. They're winning everything. Coldzera, never heard of him. What about that clip on Mirage where the crosshair follows the guy dropping down? Must be cheating. Must be cheating. They're all cheating. Everything they do is completely invalid. That was the horse shit we had to listen to in Counter-Strike for about 2 fucking years till they dropped off and then people started crying. We had to listen to it for a year when Fnatic were the top team. They're all cheating. Crims is cheating. Olaf's cheating. JW's cheating. They're all cheating. The number 1 team is always cheating, guys. So if you've been the number one team for approximately like a period of 2 years or thereabouts, like the Brazilian guys were, took us to that next level before the Astralis era, for them to not understand that cheating allegations completely undercut everything, make you miserable, make an entire community hate you, and just basically denigrate your legitimate achievements. How can he not get it? How can Fallen not get it? And do you know what people in the scene did, or the other pros? They all defended you. They all literally came out and defended you and said it's an outrageous slur and people shouldn't say it. And people in the scene like me and Duncan, we defended you. We never said once. We never bought any of those outrageous lies. No matter what clips are put in our face, we're like, these are just a really, really sick team. You don't win as many lands as they are by cheating. It's nonsense. And you have gone and completely, like, all that good faith you built up, you just shit on it, mate. You just shit on it. It's embarrassing.
Where's the benefit of the doubt?
From Man of Fallen's experience.
Like, anyone who's even above the semi-pro level should automatically get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to cheating accusations. Like that's what we're saying. Even if you have a dodgy clip, it better be a really insane one. As we said, these are fairly mild. Like, these are ones where I'm not joking. If you showed someone this clip, like the overpass clip's the best example. Show someone the overpass clip, right? And don't tell them what they're supposed to be looking for. I guarantee they'll miss what they were supposed to look for. If you frame it beforehand and tell them, look right here, it's going to look weird, then they'll see it. Otherwise, they could easily miss it in the space of a game. So that's my problem as well, is if you're going to be this bold, you better basically be nailing your balls to the fucking door, just saying, like, I'm willing to put my whole career on the line. Because remember, this ties into another issue. It ties into the issue of the Furia, MIBR, should we restart the round thing again? Because here's an area where I can't comment on these things in the world of politics anymore, so you haven't seen me comment on any things in this year. But one area I actually have found I have a strength as an individual is because I come from a background where it was very difficult for me to understand how other people communicated with me because my brain was different to theirs. I had to learn how to put myself in their position in a way other people often didn't. Like, I had to basically recreate all of their life to then think, how would they have this thought? Like, how could they arrive at this thought? And so in doing so, I'm often able to actually figure out someone else's perspective when they haven't actually been very clear about it. So here's my perspective on why I think the Brazilian players, but notably the usual offenders, Fallen, Tackle being the number one cases. The reason why I think that they always come out, and rather than go through basically procedure, like what is the due process, who is the person who is in charge of doing this, rather than go to that person, the reason they go to Twitter, as far as I can tell, is this. It's that they feel frustrated that they have a lack of agency on this topic. They don't think it can be resolved. Like, they don't think if they talk to admins will ever fix that rule about restarting the round. They don't think in this case anyone will ever actually look into whether a player cheats. So out of frustration, they think the only way they can affect the world and stop this incident that they think is bad from happening is to publicly court public opinion, basically. Now, there's not like that in itself isn't like an evil intention. But if you actually look at the effects and the consequences of that, it does become evil because, as you see, you just rile up your fan base against the other person. You just make that person get like untold amounts of shit, whether you were once telling them to or not. Like, that is the end result. So even though I can actually totally understand the initial position, that's why I've offered these people to come on shows. Let's get the topic out there. I even told them, let's get the fucking admins that you feel don't understand the rule on the show, and we'll talk with all of them, and maybe we can progress this. But the one thing we can't do is just basically send little tribes of people after other people. Like, that's just not like, we're not in some post-apocalyptic world where like Fallen's fucking Immortan Joe or whatever, and he's just sending out his guys to just go wreck everyone. Like, we can't live as like, can't have a community if we're going to be like that, guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen. So the fallen issue is bad enough in the sense that imagine what you're like if you're a 16-year-old kid. You have one of the best series, one of your best career performances, and with it the career victory. And you have a legendary player I'm sure you must look up to on some level if you play CSGO. I think it'd be very hard not to look up to Fallen and everything he's achieved. And you go on Twitter after that result, and you know the fans are going to ride you. But there you have this legendary player basically saying, and if you look at his tweet, he didn't say those clips were a bit suspicious. He called them, quote, blatant aim locks.
Yes.
Blatant aim locks. Fallen's words, Now, I don't know about you guys, but let me help break it down for you. And Fallen speaks perfect English, so this isn't lost in translation. A blatant aim lock means he is blatantly cheating. The end. He blatantly cheated.
It's self-evident. So, that's the point. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It is. So. Imagine being that kid. You're getting told to kill yourself. You're getting told people are coming to kill your family. You're getting told, if you come to Brazil, we're going to kill you.
The usual.
And then you're like, well, yeah, this is just usual for beating a Brazilian team. I'll go and see what my colleagues are saying about it. And you have a legendary player, a Hall of Famer player, one of the most successful in-game leaders of all time, saying you are a blatant cheater at 16. It's just unconscionable that you would do that to a kid. And anyone who thinks he's not going to be affected by that,
it's too late, mate. It's all, the damage is done. Even if nothing else happened, even if not another tweet was sent, the damage is done. Because this is the thing people like that don't get. When I say to give the people the benefit of the doubt, right? This is now, believe it or not, I can't even believe when I say this out loud now. This is like a controversial opinion in 2020. But you know what? The reason why you don't just say, kill them all and let God decide is because some innocent people will fucking be killed. So what you don't ever do is when you are not certain someone did something wrong, you do not send the mob that has the effect of virtually killing them. Because in that scenario, like, first of all, the logical premise that people never even bring up in that case is there has to be an afterlife for that to even make fucking sense. And a God that judges people actually based on what they did. Otherwise, you're just murdering people. But the reason why I bring this up is people will have seen the last few months, the opposite is being preached now. What we're being told, which Fallen's logic would be in line with, is if there's even like a 1% chance he cheated, fuck it, let's get all the cheaters. And if a few innocent people got caught along with the drift, unfortunate for them, but we got all the cheaters right. Nah. The reason I tweeted not that long ago a moment from one of my favorite movies of all time, A Man for All Seasons, is because there's a brilliant speech he makes in it, right? Where one of his, I think it's his son-in-law or something, is basically saying like, oh, we should stop this for this reason. He's like, well, no, that because the laws of the land don't dictate that. And he says to this guy, would you just tear down the laws of the land to catch the devil? And the guy's like, of course, I would tear down every law. And then his point he makes is like, yeah, but then what would you have to nail him on at the end? Like nothing. You had to ruin every law essentially to catch the guy. So in the same scenario, like people like Fallen, etc., don't seem to understand. This is just not the way it's done. It is not. This isn't even a debatable topic. You are picking the worst way to do it.
But, I mean, so let's also call it as it is. Fallen's not even the worst offender.
No.
Right. So a little bit of historical context here for those that don't know. If anyone thinks that Gaules... Right, and by the way, I am sick and tired of hearing from the fucking peanut gallery about how fucking great a guy he is because he's overcome personal hardship. Many people overcome personal hardships in their lives. Some might even be on this podcast.
Medal, believe it or not. I try to just live my life. That's the beauty of it, you know.
Right? You know, some might even be on this podcast, but the reality is we can still be cunts from time to time.
Of course.
It doesn't mean you're going to be, well, he's overcome personal hardship, so he immediately has a bodhisattva-like perspective on life. No, that's gibberish. But equally as well, he has done some of the most cuntish things I have ever seen done, and he wields his fan base with like it is a cudgel and a weapon to club people with, and he knows he's doing it, and he does it repeatedly. Let me just remind you, when there was that broadcast where people put a Furia logo in the bin, I think it was Sponge and Sean Guess were the two analysts. He highlighted it, and him, Chad and obviously Sean, unbelievable corral hole levels. Death threats. People were threatening to harm Sean Gay's child. Right? That is the depth of depravity that the Gaules fan base goes to. And Sean is such a stand-up nice guy. He never complained about it. He just said that this is happening. Sean's got some clout. He could have immediately gone, by the way, to that tournament organizer and said, listen, your official Brazilian language broadcaster has caused this. My child is being threatened. Either you do something about it or I walk off the broadcast. He could have easily done that. There wouldn't be a person in the world, maybe outside of Brazil, that wouldn't have backed him on that. But he didn't do it because Sean's a nice guy. He loves Counter-Strike. He loves being part of the scene. He is a pragmatist in a sense. He believes that a few bad apples don't tar us all with the same way. But it has happened with the Gaules fan base so many times now that it is outrageous if you are a tournament organizer, having watched a 16-year-old kid get death threats because your official Brazilian language partner took a part of his stream, which you only use for numbers, by the way, and dedicated it to saying a kid has cheated in a video game with no evidence. Now, I'm just going to go out and I'll fucking say it because I don't give a fuck. I told Gaules if I ever see him, we'll have fucking words. We'll have harsh words because I love Sean and I love his family and I've known him for fucking years. And I'm not the forgiving type. So all of this, let's get him involved with the major at Brazil. Let's bring him into the talent pool. He's so popular. You got no place as long as I'm part of the CS scene, homie. Don't come rocking up to an event I'm at, ever. Until you get on your fucking knees and beg Sean for forgiveness for what you fucking did. But I'll tell you this
also,
on top of that.
You know that whole thing which they tried to play off as a meme, the come to Brazil thing? Right, you know what? Yeah. I've never gone mad about that. Like, it's not. I know it was one that like triggered you a similar time period, like last year, sometime when he was saying that shit. I think it was around the same major where they were saying it. You know, come to Brazil. He'd said it to me on Twitter, right? Because I didn't really know that much of what Gaules was about, so I just remember him as a 1.6 player. So I always thought, again, listen to this Fallen. Oh, benefit of the doubt, whatever. He was a guy from back in the days. Maybe he's like the Brazilian version of me. Maybe he's just too edgy with his humor and people are taking out of context. So I thought, you know what? I won't go too mad about that. Maybe it is just a meme that they're playing into. As people will know myself, I have made the mistake of going too close to the line and tripping over it, trying to call it community memes. But I tell you what, I'm taking that whole come to Brazil thing way more seriously now. I alluded to this on Twitter, but fuck it, I'll just come out and say it. At an event this year, in my home country, some Brazilians who had traveled from Brazil, the second that the broadcast ended and I turned away to go to the green room, shouted from about 10 meters away from me, Thorin, we know where you live. And I tell you what, everyone else on this broadcast, I'm not joking, wanted these people kicked out of the event, banned for life. And you know what? The sad thing is this, right? I actually naively thought, well, you know what? They're probably just people who took it too hard, that joke I made years ago. And naively, Rich, I actually told the organisers, don't kick them out. Just tell them, don't shout anything else. You can say what you want in the context of the game. Because I thought to myself, I don't want some idiot who doesn't know what he's doing and has travelled all the way from Brazil to just get booted out of the event on like day one. Because he's just like, maybe he had 2 beers too many and he's just shouted something stupid, But then when I think back now, where is the line going to be if we allow that behavior? Like at this point, would the guy be able to run up to me and pretend he was going to punch me and then pull back at the last second and go, just kidding. Like, where would the line be? Like, when do we get to the point where it's totally unacceptable?
We know.
It's why I keep telling people, I'm not just saying I don't think Valve should hold a major in Brazil. I think Brazil should never be allowed a CS major purely just on the basis of what's already happened. People having their face spit in, legendary players that won't even tell the story, having their hair fucking yanked back when they came into the arena. Shit like that. Yep. People being outside your hotel room at night shouting stuff and trying to call your room and stuff. Behavior that is like, we're talking like the only area in sports I could even find an equivalent are the really terrible stories you hear are like the 60s when people were like being racist to like the Boston Celtics or outrageous stories like that. It's nothing from modern day. Like in modern day sports, you get kicked out of the fucking venue if you do anything on this level. So like, I have to say that the reason I bring the story up is this is not a community of people who themselves are blameless, yet they engage in the worst behavior.
And it's the thing, like, you've got a platform, right? You're not responsible for the actions of others. But if every time you do things like this, the actions lead to the same outcomes, it is incredibly hard to say you're not being complicit. It's like, you're not just tweeting ridicule. You're not just saying, I think this player won't ever play like that again, or got lucky, or lol, online CS is meaningless. You're calling a 16-year-old kid a cheater. As a result of that, people are threatening to kill him. There is a world where Chaos could qualify for the major. There's a world where Chaos could qualify and have to go.
I can't even imagine that.
If you are Leaf now, as a 16-year-old boy, are you going to Brazil?
No way.
Because I'll Yeah, I wouldn't go to Brazil.
If I was his parents, I wouldn't let him go, mate. No joke. Like, you don't know. You can't take... Because as I say with my example, even if the example I had of what happened to me was a joke, the person doing that joke doesn't know how inappropriate that is. The joke may as well just be, hey, Thorin, I'll kill your whole family after this game. Like, that's not a joke at that point in time. Where is the humor in that? The humor ended way before you ever physically thought you could do that in person. So similarly, if I'm Leaf now, you couldn't go to the major in good conscience. In fact, I'm not joking. You'd be a fool to. You'd be a fool to. So are you ready? Riot Games will love this. Guess what, Valve? You're allowing an unsafe environment to exist for your pro players. And from who? A random community member? No. From a literally someone who's been officially co-signed as a streamer of the event. Someone you're giving platform access to. That's why I made that tweet. I never said, by the way, Gaules should have his stream taken away. That is my personal opinion. Yeah. I was making a point that the mechanism that allows him to call others out should logically allow others, including pro players like Leaf, to go to the tournament organizer, because that would be the appropriate way for them to handle it, and say to them, I can't play in your tournament if this guy's going to do this. And in fact, I'm going to have to inform people that I'm unsafe if I play in your event, because TOs do become complicit when they give that person that approval.
Well, let me also add, by the way, incredible, of course, CSPPA nowhere to be seen, but we'll talk about, I mean, maybe you might want to protect the 16-year-old kid. I don't know. Seems like something instinctively I would do, but whatever. But just before we move on to that, right, let's also then talk about, okay, if Gaules comes with cap in hand and apologizes and says, you know what, I shouldn't have said the kid cheated. I love Brazilian CS. I love MIBR.
It's going to be the pivot, isn't it? I know where this is going on.
Yeah. Like, if he just apologized, if he just apologized, maybe we can say, well, you know, he's learning. He hasn't been this level of streamer for long. Maybe he's not aware of the big. I mean, I would never give him that benefit of the doubt because he's done it too many times. He's even done it to Fallen, by the way. Go look up the incident where Gaules, when Fallen launched his own website, and Gaules deliberately said on a stream, "Hey, do you think if we all go and visit it, it'll crash?" And basically crashed Fallen's website on its launch. So Fallen and Gaules, it's not like they're all. I mean, Fallen literally called him a retard for that. So anyway, go look up that incident. He knows exactly what he's doing, guys, is what I'm trying to tell you, right? So what he did, instead of apologizing, right? Instead of apologizing and owning it and saying, you know what, 16-year-old kid, yeah, that's a bit rough for me, right? He then decided, because he got some pushback, maybe don't set a ravenous hate mob on a child on the internet. He turned around and said, well, it just goes to show you, doesn't it? I accuse a 16-year-old pro of cheating, who then gets death threats and probably can never come to Brazil if he was to qualify for the biggest tournament in his career. But where are these people criticizing me when people are racist about Brazilians on HLTV forums? And so, on what is already a powder keg that is cracking at the seams with gunpowder and there's sparks flying out from nearby dodgy electrics, right? He then decides, fuck it, let's say everyone is racist against Brazilians and imply that the reason we're angry and the reason we go after these people is because we have to look after our own because no one else will, as if that would in any way justify the behavior. Like, you know, it sounds like such a simplistic way of summing it up, but obviously two wrongs do not make a right. We learn that at a very early age. It's an adage that is a cliche, but has a lot of truth to it. So now, those same people who were raging at this kid were now raging at anyone who defended him. You're racist against Brazilians. You hate Brazilians. You know, corral ho, corral ho, corral ho. So instead of just diffusing the situation, he went in and fucking threw gasoline all over what was already a raging fire. And now, yeah, you want to talk about dangerous environments? It sounds awful. I honestly hope the major doesn't go ahead. I never thought I would sit here and say that. I never thought I would say it.
By the way, like, if you think it through logically, think about, again, what Gaules' case is here, right? Either he admits this is whataboutism, like he's like, yeah, but what about this other totally unrelated thing that happened? Like, what about that? Either he admits that, or if he's being serious and he sees a connection between anyone non-Brazilian tweeting about Brazilians and racism on HLTV forums, he's racist. He is by definition xenophobic. There's no other way around it. Because his logic goes like this. It's like, you'll have heard this said a lot. His logic basically goes, why can't everyone in the world not Brazilian handle the other non-Brazilian? Like, we have no relation to them. What are you talking about? That would be like us saying, Gaules, it's your fault every single time a Brazilian person ever says something racist to me. Of course not.
Well, also, can we also just point out the hilarity? It's not even hilarious. It's not hilarious. It's ridiculous. Of this, like, how many times have you been racially abused by Brazilians? I mean, all the time.
Mate, use that for word gringo all day.
Yeah, I was going to say, gringo, all sorts of shit. I've been doing Portuguese translate, white devil, all sorts of mad stuff. So colour of my skin's fucking getting me fully wrecked. You don't think I can have an opinion about Counter-Strike, Brazilian culture? And I've said it many times on the podcast, by the way. This is devastating to me personally to see where we're at and working in this scene, because I love fucking Brazilian culture. I love it. I've loved it ever since I was growing up, mad on football and loving all the Brazilian stuff. I've read books about it. I'm always talking about, you know, how Brazilian culture, one of the reasons why you'll often see, like, if you watch Brazilian cinema, you know, they all have a kind of anti-hero archetype. They're always like kind of hustlers and tricksters, and they get away with doing the bare minimum, and they fool the system and they fool authority with their wit and their guile. And how that then applies to soccer, and then how it applies to like Brazilian jazz music, how it applies to things like capoeira, you know, how they had to call it a dance to trick the people to learn they weren't defending. Brazilian culture and history is fucking awesome to read about and learn about it. I fucking love it, right? And it breaks my heart to see where we're at when it comes to sports. Because it ain't just CS, by the way. We're catching up. We're catching up to shit that existed in MMA. We're catching up to shit that existed at the Olympics. There's an article on quartz.com, by the way. I urge people to read it. It was just titled, Why Brazilians Can't Stop Booing at the Olympics. And it'll tell you about, you know, women athletes that won medals who were booed to the point where they were in tears on the podium. They didn't understand why everyone hated them. This is a culture of hate that goes beyond we want our guys to win. It is, we will do and say anything and maybe even kill the other people that are trying to beat our guys. That's not where we're at with sporting ideals. And it certainly has no place in Counter-Strike. And it should have been stamped out when it all started in the first place. And people like fucking Fallen and his teammates and people like Gaules have perpetuated it. So we're at this point. So I absolutely, first of all, two things need to come of this. Because I don't think people really realize how serious this is. If Leaf went to that event, his life would be in danger. He's a 16-year-old boy and his life was in danger. You think that's hyperbolic? Hiko. When Hiko had the incident where they wouldn't restart after the computer got kicked, had to go to a Brazilian tournament, needed bodyguards the entire time. Why'd you have bodyguards? People are trying to kill you. His life was in danger over a video game incident that was hyped up by Fallen and his crew and everyone else in that Brazilian CS fandom. Freiburg had it as well. This is not like a one-off incident. It's so mad to me. Also, as well, by the way, I know you might not like this segment. Oh, and one other bit just before we move on, actually. Gaules then, on top of playing and giving a speech about how everyone's racist against Brazilians, while simultaneously talking, everyone said, I did a tweet where I said, oh, Gaules will call out Fur then, because Fur actually racially abused Brazilians when he gave his speech about how people who have, and by the way, people are saying, Richard, you're going soft, you're turning to social justice. I cannot explain, if you don't understand this, I don't know how to explain it to you. He said, if you have essentially African hair, curly hair, it is bad. It is bad hair. And that European-centric hair is good and superior, and that's what he has. If you don't understand now in this day and age why that is appalling, fuck it then. Go down with that ship. I'll be over here with the rest of the people, right? That understand when you start getting into fucking genetics and how one set of genetics is superior to the other. You might maybe realize how bad things.
It's around eugenics at some point in time, there, aren't you? Like.
Yeah. And so everyone said, well, actually, Richard, you've got it wrong again, because Gaules did talk about it. I literally got a Brazilian friend of mine to take that video where he talked about the fur incident on stream, and all he said was, probably a bit silly to say it, but I don't want to get too involved. He talked about it, but he didn't pass judgment, which is crazy, because I thought he was against people racially abusing Brazilians, and Fur did that. Not to mention he's got previous, and I'm trying to stay out of the cancel culture. I've said I will not use my platform to have people's livelihood took away for prior sins, especially ones for which they have paid for. But if you are going to fuck around, I've got all the receipts. There's other clips of Fur saying racist things, transphobic things, homophobic things. I just tweeted out one clip where he liberally used the N-word in 2017. And everyone said, well, Richard, bringing this up again, how dare you? Most people don't know about it. They don't know about it because the Brazilian scene, and ever since they've been at MIBR especially, they cover it up. Why was Fur's apology for racism only put out in Portuguese? Do you know why? Because it was at the time when all the George Floyd riots were kicking off. So holy shit. Like, if that had gone out in English and blew up on social media, they got to fire him. They would have to fire him. And they didn't want to do that. So they snuck out an apology in Portuguese. That's how cynical they are. No values. No values, no principles. Fur had the nerve, by the way, in reaction to that tweet. He blocked me on Twitter and then said, listen, guys, this cancel culture's getting out of hand. No one is cancelling you ever, by the way. You get away with, we're on the precipice of literal murder and you're getting away with it every time. So, maybe the time for the kid gloves we all is, maybe they need to come off. I'm taking them off. I don't give a fuck. I said it now. I'm going to be writing articles about you and everything you do wrong and every fuck up you make till the cows come home. I'll leverage every connection, every sponsorship. And I'm going to start by just saying, Gaules didn't even walk it back. Not only did he fire it up with the racism stuff, he then tweeted again, because you may have noticed that perhaps mentally affected by everything that was going on, they lost to a team called Zepug Gods.
Yes, Chaos did.
Yeah. And Leaf didn't have a great game. So what did Gaules do?
Because why doesn't he just cheat? He gets away with it, apparently.
Yeah, well, no. So imagine this. Not only
right, exactly.
Not only is he a cheater, he only cheats against Brazilians, probably because he secretly hates Brazil. That is now the narrative that fucking moron is peddling to hundreds of thousands of people who we know do love a death threat. So there's the tweet, Sam, if you want to bring it up.
I'll be back in 1 minute, okay?
Yeah. Mate, I got a layer of sweat coming off me for this segment, by the way. Do I look like a fat boy, Sam?
Nah, luckily the camera quality's low, mate. You can't see nothing. It's fine.
Fuck, I am pouring. I am dripping. Like, all them fat burners I'm taking, mate. So anyway, yeah. He tweeted out this, which I'm guessing you've got on screen now, Sam. I can't have the screen on it, take up too much bandwidth. Yeah, but he basically said nothing. Here's a score chart, and of course, Leaf is second from bottom, and Xeppes is rock bottom, and both of those were accused. I mean, we're glossing over the Xeppes accusations. They were thrown in. I mean, that's the other insanity of it all. Everyone focused on Leaf. They accused 2 players of cheating in that game. But yeah, so why would you cheat against MIBR and then just think, yeah, we'll turn them off as the pug gods, lose, be embarrassed? And well, mate, if you're already cheating against high-profile teams, why wouldn't you continue to cheat? Absolutely zero fucking logic in what they are saying. And the fact that, again, Gaules is enjoying this. Gaules is enjoying these kids being bullied, being harassed, anyone who has a good performance against MIBR. He is trying to create a culture where the psychology is, if you play well against MIBR, this is what you get, to try and help the team. So now, not only is he using his fan base to harass people, he is now also disproportionately influencing competitive integrity, right? And as a result of that, this is what I say, and I absolutely believe this. At this point now, and I'm watching all of you TOs, and I know all your reps watch the podcast, see if we light you up. If your next official Brazilian language stream features Gaules, you co-sign all of the above. You say that you don't care about young people being harassed. Don't ever tweet about mental health and bullying and harassment. Don't you ever dare go and have a partnership with any key you want to stop all of those things. Don't you dare take a sponsor that has publicly said they stand against that because you want to get an extra 100,000 viewers on your fucking
against
deck.
racism.
Yeah, right. Or against racism, because you are literally standing with someone who is doing all of the above. So that's your choice now, right? That is the choice. So I've got no problem with Gaules streams the games that are on GoTV, same rights as everyone else. But if you make him an official tournament broadcaster, fuck you. And remember, I'm coming back to events. I'm coming back to events as soon as coronavirus is over. And I know you all want me involved. You've been reaching out.
If people are missing the point here, the distinction is this, it's not that this is the world me and Richard want to live in. I'd rather live in a world where people could make these minor mistakes, apologize to them and go on with their life. But if these people are going to hold the rest of us to this standard, they must be held to that standard. It is the only way to show them and others that this behavior cannot go on.
Yeah. So there's that. I'll also just add in what was one of the, it was like, again, that fucking, I love that meme. That's my favorite meme right now. You can all have your Nigerian funeral dudes or whatever. My favorite meme will always be Godzilla, let them fight. I love it. That is so good. But anyway, Device came out and tweeted. Let me just read you the tweet. Because I know you and Device, obviously he's dead to you and all that. But Device said that it was like the biggest pussy move ever to call people cheaters when you've lost a game, and that they should just be humble, accept their loss, and get on with it. And irony, can you believe
irony, massive irony, lack of self-awareness, 100%. So basically, Rich, if you lose the game, just get on with it and just fucking chill out. Don't call people out and just go about Otherwise, I mean, in this case, you're not a cheater, but you're kind of a pussy ass bitch in some ways, you know.
Right. I mean, sure.
Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm trying to craft a narrative here, Duncan. You're kind of ruining it. I'm trying to be like the mainstream media and tell my audience what to believe. Can you let me do that, please, without challenging my narrative creation? So it was great at Device, who's obviously never done anything like that himself at any point in his life, to really take the stand.
I agree with this.
And what that led... Yeah, no, absolutely. And basically, what ended up happening was you had Astralis fans and MIBR fans going head-to-head in some battle of the delusional masses. Oh, God, I've never seen anything like it. Because I think Astralis fans are obviously the only group of fans that can say to the Brazilians, like, how many majors Corral cake.
There you go.
Yeah, so I was just watching that from a distance. Anyway, that's enough about the Brazilian drama. Let's get to another battle of two powerhouses. People said we wouldn't talk about it on the stream. I told you I don't give a fuck. 2020, like, mate, the last 6-7 months have kicked the ever-loving shit out of me. So I'm just looking at it. Like, it's like, you know, I'm in a 2-up-2. Well, no, it's not 2-up. It's a 3-up. I'm in a 3-up-2 down house in fucking Birmingham. I used to live in Vegas. I used to be a party animal. It's all swirling down the path.
I know where you're going on this one, though. Is this about someone getting cancelled?
Well, no. Listen, fuck cancelled. Let's not call it that, right? People said we wouldn't talk about Banks and Redeye.
Which, by the way, I'll just say this right now, right? Literally, there is no such thing as a journalistic obligation to talk about every topic that's unethical in the world. That is a fictional standard that never existed and was pulled out of the arse of people who don't even know about journalism. So this notion that me and Richard are like character actors for a movie that you're constructing in your brain, and that when you decide something's criminal, you can say that if we don't come and call it out, then we're corrupt. Like, that's just such a nonsense standard to have, especially because the people who do it are the ones who say that everything we say is a lie anyway. Like, the entire premise doesn't even work. Like, there's not even an incentive for us to do it. Now, this particular incident, I find mad that anyone would say we wouldn't talk about. This is prime grist for this fucking show. Have you been missing this show where we've had to call out people people who are like personal friends of ours, etc. Like, no, of course this is a topic we'd talk about.
I honestly read, again on Reddit, I don't have the thread to hand because I think I was still in the process of moving house. But I saw it where there was a guy on there. Oh, what's his name? Oh, he's so ill. We've called him out on the show before, so I don't know if I want to do it now because a lot of these people thrive on the notoriety. And
they like the shout-outs for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and it feeds back into their lunacy. But he's one of them anyway. And he said, like somebody said, I doubt Richard will call him out as he is friends with both. And then someone replied, going, "You mean Richard Lewis isn't a bastion of journalistic integrity and picks favourites? Colour me surprised." And then his next 20 posts in that thread were all about why I have no integrity and have covered for my friends when they do unethical things with zero evidence.
I'm not even aware of a single case of you ever doing that. If people don't know, the most famous article ever linked by all search engines about me being fired from that event in Poland was written by Richard. He is the author. Go look at the byline.
Yeah, and people don't realise this. The reason that blew up, and this is what gave me a lot of pause for thought, and it really put I mean, if me and Duncan hadn't already been through the shit, I think me and Duncan's relationship probably would have been over. I mean, if Duncan had never talked to me again, I would have totally understood it. But I wrote that article, and in writing that article, what I came to realize is when you write out a quote and divorce it from its original context, it can look way more damning, and you can use that as a weapon. And you really have to think about that. Now, what happened to me in this situation, and Duncan knows this, we've talked about it many times. I was in a situation where I was working for a publication that was failing to get clicks. It was really struggling, and they had an office, and they would call me up and go, "Richard, you're the editor, yeah? We've got to do better. We're about 1 million views behind where we need to be to hit re-ups with our sponsors. So you're gonna have to get some really good articles." I'm like, "Mate, I'm breaking all the news that I can break." And so anything that came up that wasn't being touched by, that I knew had like viral potential, yeah, I was essentially a clickbaiter, which is why I take great exception to the term now, because I understand the mechanics of it.
Sure.
But what people also don't understand is when I did that, what my bosses would do, and they were good bosses, they were good guys, but they would always say like, "Yeah, we got 8 people working in the marketing department. John's just got bloody married, got a kid on the way. Man, if we can't get these clicks, we're gonna have to bloody farm." So I'm thinking about John and his fucking newborn baby, right? You know, and his fucking ugly wife, and you know,
sorry, John.
She was.
If you'd have known he got to be an Astralis fan, you know, he might have given me a break.
I'm trying to think now if there was actually a John in the office. Fucking hell, was there? I picked John as just a generic name. Did I work with a John? Anyway, don't matter. John.
I can corroborate. I know the sentiment though, because it's one of the main reasons, if people know famously, why I came to a dispute with some people in esports is because when they got the site killed that I worked for, I also knew similar scenarios that there was people who had like newborn children, etc. So you think now you're not just thinking this is all fun and games. You've got the site banned. You think you just fucking put that guy in the streets, you idiot. That does add a whole new level to the game.
Yeah, so I was editor-in-chief, so I had to think about my guys, right, the people I worked with, and getting them paid and getting them money, make sure their invoices were coming back and forth, and all of that stuff, and getting to events, making sure everyone was safe and looked after. But there was this extra level of pressure where it was always intimated if we fell behind on targets, massively, we'd have to start firing people. So John and his newborn kid, you know, David, you know, who's just bought a house, you know, they're out on the streets. So the pressure I was under was where it was like, listen, I know Duncan, I'm mates with Duncan, but if I don't pick this up first, and I had insider info that it had gone down because I knew all the players and knew Duncan himself, right? And obviously was on the show where it happened. Or was I might not even have been on that.
You were on that.
It might have been.
It was the next one.
Yeah, no, I was meant to be on. But obviously I know man who ran the show and Stephen and everything. So I was like, so I knew about it ahead of time. Like, so I was like, well, if I don't publish it, some other cunt will. But what my rule now is, if some other cunt is going to publish it, it doesn't have to be me. If it's a mate, it doesn't have to be me. That's like the new rule I live by. If it's something egregious, I'm doing it. And if no one else is touching it, then I'm definitely doing it. Yes. But so I'm not sticking up for my mates. but it doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be. Like what I did there.
It's very similar to my approach I've often explained on this show for other people in the industry, which is, listen, in a perfect world, we'd all even call out the TOs we're working for now. But we all know if you do that, you just won't be working for that TO. So what I would suggest as a reasonable compromise is this. If you get info about corruption within a TO you work for, give it to people who don't work for that TO or journalists. Let them expose it. And if we all do that, we don't have to all call everyone out, but collectively all the bad guys get caught. So I would say it's similar to this story, like you're saying. As long as you know someone's going to do it, it can be them who does it, not you. I think it's a good step, like kind of line in the sand.
Yeah, and that's the only line I can draw, because if no one's going to do it, like, I mean, with the Duncan thing, the bottom line is it was going to come out. Oh, everyone knew it was, everyone, you know, it was just whether I got the traffic because I published it 6 hours before it was public. And in the situation I was in, I chose that. But in the way I wrote it up, because obviously I understand the journalistic craft and how to do a story, it wasn't some throwaway twit longer. It wasn't a Reddit post. It wasn't a tweet, you know, or a generic infographic statement. It was a carefully crafted piece by piece explanation of what happened with quotes laid out to verify what I was saying. So as a result, those quotes, divorced from their original context, they did make it look like Duncan was saying awful things about Poland. And people used that for years to say he was a racist, even though one of the quotes I left out, not deliberately, but just because it wasn't relevant to the reporting I was doing, was him decrying Polish football hooligans for being racist and the experience of black players in the Polish Football League. So had I included those quotes, the R word would have never entered into it, but I didn't. So I absolutely fucked Duncan up there for years. And it was. I imagine it took great fortitude and mental character for us to even maintain a relationship after that. I can imagine most people would be incredibly bitter, but it taught me a very important lesson. But on the basis of that being a real story that really happened, how can anyone ever say I wouldn't go after my mates, Duncan, Steele? Like, at the end, they all know it. People, when I won the fucking last Journalist of the Year award, people come up to me and literally said, people who I've had arguments with all the time, they said to me, like, I don't like you, you do good work, and I know you would nail me if I ever did anything wrong. And for that, I understand why you're necessary for the business. Respect. No one gets a pass. You can't. I can't live like that. The principle. I am somebody whose principles and values are put above all things, even to my own physical and mental health. I can't exist in a world where I have to shelve my values because I've done it in the past and I know how much it hurts. I think a large part of the cognitive dissonance and the mental health issues we have is we constantly have to surrender things that are key to who we are on a daily basis.
If people don't,
we surrender them.
I would suggest people go and read stories and real life anecdotes of people who lived under oppressive totalitarian regimes. Because one of the things they will tell you could be North Korea, could be the USSR. One of the things they'll tell you is it's not even that you have to do the things that the state demands of you. It's when you can no longer even say, and so eventually you stop even thinking because your brain just goes, what's the point? And when you can't do that, you just feel your soul and your identity just like ash in the wind. It just blows away. And eventually there's nothing left. And you only realize later that was the biggest imposition, was when they made it so that you even in private with a friend would think, oh, but are they going to say something? If like when you do that, it's done. You're done with as a person.
Yeah, I mean, think about all the foul, evil regimes that force people to collaborate. It's collaborate or die. It's collaborate or your family dies. And people do it, and they survive the atrocity. They survive the regime, but then they're left with the spiritual malaise, the guilt. It erodes your soul because you always think, was it worth selling the values or the principles? I learned this very early on in life. That the money it's not a
doesn't
comfort
at all. No. You'll have spent it one day, then what?
Yeah, it's like you've got to stand for something. You might not even always stand for the right things, but if it makes sense for you internally and you can be at peace with it and you can get to the end of your life and just before you check out, your life made some sort of coherent, consistent sense, then fine, I guess. Like maybe that's the best any of us can hope for. So obviously we were going to talk about Banks and Redeye, and yeah, I'm friends with both of them. I've known them many years. I've worked with them across a bunch of events. But I gotta call out what I gotta call out. So I think first let's just present what happened. I don't know. I feel like I've been talking a lot this podcast. So do you want to lay out?
Yeah, I'll give the basic story. So, I mean, we won't dive into some of the behind the scenes stuff until afterwards. Like you say, we'll just put the basic facts out there. So what happened was Banks had already previously made tweets where he was sort of subtweeting this topic and saying, like, you know, should I call people out who've done things, or if people are malicious, you know, he'd already kind of hinted this was coming. And basically, he just published himself a document that was like his own stories. So his own anecdotes included a scenario where he worked for Gfinity. It was at the same time me, Richard, and Scoots were the Gfinity's Angels, if you remember, from 2015. Yeah. And at this time period, famously, Banks had that final. I think it was actually the one where it was like Nip versus Envy. And he just kept saying, like, would you look at that? Would you look at that? Like over and over again. It obviously became a meme in the community about him, right? And basically his story is, because that was an event he commentated, I believe it was after that event that Redeye joined from ESL as like I'm going to say like a project manager type role, executive producer type role, something along those lines, some like high up key position where he was in charge of the broadcast basically. And when he joined, he says in this piece that Redeye basically told him privately, like, I'm going to make you just the host. That's it. And in fact, Banks claims he had a contract that said he would be a commentator, play-by-play, I'm assuming, for the rest of the year, for the rest of these events. So already that had set him off. And then he implies that and then a mixture of other bad behavior meant that he would literally get anxiety if he even saw Redeye, and that, you know, this is all like torturing him, basically. And then he also I can't remember from the first one he included, I think he also implied like other people's stories of like he punched the guy or something, you know. But in the first one, it was mainly Banks's stories and then like implying what other people had done. Then Redeye and Luke Cotton of Code Red Esports came out and basically denied it all. And actually, Luke Cotton made probably the biggest misplay of your fucking hand I've ever seen, where he just basically outed himself as actually blackmailing Banks directly. And then, which didn't play into what Banks was saying. And then Banks came out with even more stories, mostly, I will say in this case, of other people. And that's actually also part of the thing we have to discuss now. So basically, it was like there was one legit thing that is unarguable, which is if Redeye really did physically assault someone, that in itself should be talked about in the community. That is something that should probably be outed. I would say personally, it's also a police matter. I believe you should not stay silent about those topics no matter what. And then secondly, there's the whole issue, which basically becomes, is being an arsehole or really difficult to work with a crime in itself? So that gets drawn into it as well. So now we can discuss all this.
Yeah, so lots of topics. So the first thing I also want to add, just as a little bit of additional detail, as me and Duncan were kind of instrumental, like we are with a lot of CS memes, we're the guys that, you know, we're the guys that popularise fucking Corral Hall being mispronounced. We're the ones that, you know, fucking Fox fans and you name a meme.
King, all of them.
Yeah, despicable. Yeah, we're always at the forefront of that, popularizing that shit. And I suppose everything we say about Gaules should apply to us. We should probably think. I never knew until recently that literally everyone says, whether they claim to publicly or not, they do watch this podcast and they do watch what we say. And memes do take root and do take hold, and they can be quite upsetting to some people. So I want to add that Banks is a diabetic, and I don't know how many people know that. And he was having a blood sugar crisis because he hadn't eaten. He was so nervous about doing this because he was aware it was a big audition and a big platform and maybe the biggest he'd ever commentated on. So he didn't eat. He was too nervous to eat. You know, people who, if you've ever done broadcast work or anything where you're publicly nervous, you might get sick. You might not feel hungry. Your adrenaline spikes and you feel nauseous and you don't want to eat. So James Banks ended up having a blood sugar crisis in that broadcast. And he said he'd fucking gone into the future. He'd lost his fucking mind because he needed some insulin. And he was basically going, would you look at that? Would you look at that? And then he kept saying it because he was trying to he was like a fucking boxer who was out on his feet. He was just trying to fucking get to the end of the show and go do what he had to do. Anyone else, by the way, I mean, fair play to him, what a fucking trooper. Anyone else would have just pieced the fuck out and got
Yeah, just leave someone on his own, yeah.
Yeah, it's diabetes, man. Like, you don't fuck around with that shit. So he was, we didn't know that when we did the meme. So I feel terrible. I do feel terrible, but we didn't know. We thought he was just being shit. So we didn't know he was having a fucking crisis. So I'll add that. But, right, here's the stuff we got to talk about. So, Redeye. Now, me and Paul, I've said it before. We've had a weird relationship down the years, me and Paul. And then I didn't realize how bad it had got at some point. He's the guy, I'm sure I've told this story before, where me and him were like trying to have like a conciliatory drink after a period of being estranged and not talking to each other. And he went, that's the thing, Richard, we've always bloody hated each other. And the reality was I hadn't hated him at all. And I went, no, but wait, you hate me? And he's like, yeah, of course I hate you. You hate me, though, don't you? No. Paul's that kind of guy. Now, I used to work under Paul when I was at Heaven Media. Paul was brought in as the guy that was going to revamp all of our content section. And I was the editor of Cadred, and I think eventually Tech 9, but he was kind of above me in the sense for our entire portfolio, he was the guy who controlled all the editors and all the content. And let me tell you, he was a fucking tyrant. Now, he'd just come from CGS. So I will always give people contextual understanding of their lives. Because Paul is simultaneously a good guy and a guy with huge gaping flaws in his personality, like most human beings are, by the way.
Which actually, by the way, people don't know, he even owned to exactly what Richard's talking about now in a tweet longer about mental health. I think maybe last year even, or 2 years ago, where he essentially said that he himself knew that he could be an arsehole and do fucked up things, but that he also at the same time did it from like positions of insecurity and guilt, and that he was racked by it. And it's not like, it's actually not the case, as people will present in this scenario, that it's only now because he's gotten caught for this shit that he's actually sort of done a mea culpa. He actually tried to do that throughout his career. So I'll corroborate. I agree.
Yes.
I've had my own reasons. I mean, he was the guy who fired me from Katowice, and in doing so told me what obvious lies that as a journalist I was able to corroborate were not true later on. But even in spite of that, I'd say the same thing. In some ways, he's been a massive arsehole to me. In some ways, he's been a really cool colleague. It's just that it depends what day you got him on, where you are in your careers, what's going on
what
at that
role,
time.
exactly. Right, so I'll give you a bit of chronology, because Paul's gone through it. People don't know this, right? Paul's older than us. You know, you look at us, and I'm sure all you little zooms out there, we're old cunts. But people like Paul and Scoots, they're the generation up from us, right? So they've been through some shit. They've seen some shit. Paul's not living 20-year-old problems. He's like living the problems of a fully grown man who's had a life. So when I first started working with Redeye, back in this, he was in, obviously it was Championship Gaming Series. He'd been hired to be like the fucking host, and do commentary on the CS. Great gig for him. And season 1, because everyone was saying internally it had gone well, they offered Redeye a job to go and be the vice president of the company. He knew one of the guys from Fox. I always forget his name. Paul's often talked about him as being a great mentor for him. But Paul was fully juiced in. And one of the stories, so it goes, I don't know. I haven't had time to read Paul's book yet, so I don't know if this is in that or not. But this was when I think David Beckham had gone over to play football in the United States for LA Galaxy. And so they wanted a British sports commentator to go out and do just like a British stream, essentially, commentating on those soccer games. And I think Redeye was one of the people who was approached to go and do it. And he turned it down because he loved esports that much. And I know he's turned down Formula 1 jobs too, which he loves that fucking game. He loves cars going in circles for some reason. So Paul was so invested in CGS, and then Here's what happened in quick succession. CGS goes bust and doesn't even tell people in advance it's coming down the pipe. Everyone got fired by basically logging onto the website and it not being there anymore. I don't like to talk about people's personal lives, but his marriage fell through. Like, sorry, Paul, if you end up watching this, mate. I'm just trying to.
I mean, it's contextual to what's coming later anyway, so fair.
Yeah. Right, and his wife is somebody who unfortunately had a bad accident and was paralyzed. So Paul is somebody who had children, had to care for somebody as well, his partner, his wife, who was in that situation, and had all of the additional stress of working in esports, which we know is a train wreck. Jason Lake's just been talking about that. Another old school guy, been around the block. So Redeye had gone through so much. And then when he got these jobs in esports, he thought, I'm never getting got again. I'm never failing again. In his mind, it was a failure. Like, he always kind of felt if he could have done more, he could have saved CGS single-handedly. That speaks to his narcissism, but it also speaks to his drive. This is what I mean. Like, when we talk about humans, you cannot just say, well, I'm on Banks' side and Redeye's evil, or, well, Banks is an arsehole for bringing his family into it. It all matters. It's all contextual. This isn't binary. So the fires he was forged in created who he was when we started working together. And let me tell you, he worked me to the point, and this is probably a bit triggering because of everything that's been going on in the world right now. But I've accepted his apology for this, and we've worked it out. So no one needs to be angry on my behalf, right? But when I worked under him, he was I wanted to kill myself. It was and nearly did. I've been on the brink 2 other times since the time I actually, in fact, while I was at Cadred, I did do a suicide attempt. It's public knowledge. Just people didn't know it was a suicide attempt. It's in my article now, so I don't give a fuck. But I was under so much stress and pressure, I just swallowed a bunch of pills. I went out. It was my mate's birthday. I said, well, I'll have a jolly up in the day, and then I'll fuck off privately and swallow a handful of downers, neck a bottle of vodka, and just die. And somehow someone put me in a taxi. I ended up in a hospital just in time to have the epinephrine, and it saved my life. Doctor called Alan kept me going. I was in there for a week. But I didn't want to live anymore. I'd had a bad breakup. Esports was shit. I had holes in my shoes. I thought, fuck it. It's not going to get any better, is it? It's not going to get any better when you hit your 30s. So, and there was some residual stuff there. I'd nearly killed myself. Redeye was a guy who, if it wasn't perfect, he would tell you that this is your last chance. And so every day I would fuck up because I'm human, and he would be telling me, like, you're going to get fired. I was making like £400 like a month at this point. I was sleeping on a friend's couch. I fucked up my best friend at the time. I fucked up his marriage because he wouldn't kick me out, but his wife wanted to. I was sleeping on his couch making £400 a month. I had £40 a month left over once I'd kicked rent and bills up to them. That was how I was living. So, and I spent all that money on like bottles of cheap cider, like them £2.50 bottles of Accelerator or whatever it's called. I barely eat. Yeah, White Lightning, that stuff. And one day I said, one day I said, like, I can't do this. I wake up, I sit on a chat program with Paul. Paul tells me I'm a cunt, tells me I'm worthless, tells me I'm fucking up my job, tells me I'm probably going to get fired. I only make 400 quid, so I'll just kill myself. I can't live like this. So I was going to do it. And then I thought, well, it's pretty final. And one of the things that I always been told when I've been having mental health problems by shrinks that I saw and therapists and friends, they all say the same thing if they're tuned in, and they go, well, if you're going to end your life anyway, why not try and do something exceptional that is a huge risk? Because, if you're serious, take the risk.
Good way to
go all in on something. Yeah, go, instead of going all in on death, why not go all in on life? And then you've always got the option. You can always pull the plug at a later date. So I did, and I went and I talked to the bosses, and I got a promotion, and I got more money, and I turned my life around. So, me and Redeye had a terrible working relationship. But I always understood, and when we sat down and talked about it, it came from a place. He was in the same place as me. That's what I didn't know. He was suicidal. He was on the edge. He was struggling. He'd seen his life collapse. Yeah, his life was like mine. It was flawed and fucked up and miserable, and he felt he was drinking at the Last Chance Saloon right next to me. So we were like, we were in a fucking pact I didn't understand. You know,
this is also key context for people to understand with some of the stories that we're going to talk about, because one of the things I've despised about this last month is the dates I'm seeing on some of these stories. So someone in 2020 who only knows esports since maybe 2018 will judge something that happened in 2009 and think it's the same scene. It isn't. Everything was dog eat dog back then. Everyone was at everyone's throats, because that guy is literally eating the food from your plate.
Yeah, and exactly. We were forged in those fires, like Mount Doom. Yeah, well, the stakes were do or die. It felt like it. So Paul needed that job. He had his kids. He had children. He was going through a fucking bitter divorce. You know, he had all these problems, and the bottleneck in his career was me, and I was a fuck up. So no wonder he was, you know, whipping me and fucking, you know, arguing with me, and we were having all this beef. I didn't realize it because I could barely conceive of my own life, but I held his life in the palm of my hand to a certain degree, and I was fucking it up for both of us. So when we sat down and made up and reconciled, and me and him are mates now, you know, like I do consider him a friend. I've already reached out to him with everything that's gone on. He knows he was an arsehole. He apologized, but I also understand why he was that way. And I'm sorry what he went through, and he's sorry what I went through. It's not like this is some arrogance, you know. It's not like some evil thing that was done to me. It was two fucked up people in fucked up situations at a fucked up time in their life, staring into the literal abyss of non-existence and just wanting to get out. So was he a tyrant and a bit of a bully? Yeah. But do I understand? Like, maybe there is no excuse, but I've given him a pass, and I feel good about that. I've forgiven him, and I hope he's forgiven me, because I'm sure if he was on this podcast now, he'll tell you stories about what a fucking degenerate drunk I was, and not doing stuff, and getting up to nonsense, and getting involved in fights in forums, and not being appealing to sponsors. I'm sure I gave that motherfucker an ulcer, because I was difficult. I'd hit that stage in my career where I weren't going to compromise nothing. So because I didn't think I was going to live. I didn't think I was going to make it. So why would I compromise?
One thing I can also corroborate as well is not just with me and you. I have heard numerous stories of Redeye actually on his own time putting in the hours of self-reflection and realizing when he was an arsehole, someone had apologized to him privately or publicly. Like, doing it to me, of course, because obviously he fucked me over in certain ways we won't go into. But yeah, like, that's the thing. This is an example of one that I find really difficult, like you're saying, to make black and white. Like, one guy's the good guy, one guy's the bad guy. Because as far as I can tell, everyone's definitely not equally culpable, but there's a lot of fuckery on all sides in this story.
Yeah, and listen, so let's bring back the bank side into things. Now, what Paul didn't realize was what he'd done to banks and the situation in which it had been done. Because I don't know if Paul knew he was having a diabetic episode. Mate, it cut banks to the core. Like, so let me also contextually tell you about the life of James Banks, somebody else who I love dearly and have known for many years. James Banks is a fucking grinder. James Banks has been in this scene as long as any of us. Like,
he used to be a super fan. People don't know this. Like, this is a guy, no joke, who was the guy who was the biggest super fan of, let's say, like baseball or something, you know. And then, like, 15 years into being a super fan, gets the job where he's actually interviewing the players that he loved. Like, it's actually like a mad turnaround story. This guy was nobody for 10 years. He was grinding at the lowest level of esports.
Like, never said no to an event, no matter where it was in the world, no matter what he was going to be doing. He's been a caster. He's been an interviewer. He's done content. He's, you know, been an admin, been a writer. He's one of the old school esports grinders, like Duncan, like me, where we've done everything until we found what we're good at, and fortunately been given opportunities to shine, and then been able to make a career out of this. It took James longer than it took me and Duncan. And even in the CS:GO era, James Banks was still being treated like he didn't have that tenure, didn't have that experience. And what I was seeing was that there were people who didn't take an interest in the career of James Banks. They figured, well, if he's been around this long and it hasn't happened for him, he'll never be good. There is a prevailing attitude like that in this industry.
Yes.
Well, if you haven't already blown up, you're not going to, so why should I take the risk? Why should I put you on when I can have a more popular guy? I can get more bangs for my buck. So people do that so you don't get the shots. It becomes a compounding problem. So when James got that commentary gig and it went so bad, like, he was devastated. And what he needed was someone to come along and tell him, like, you know, fuck it. Like, he was too proud as well to say about the diabetic stuff at the time to anyone. And what he needed was someone to lift him up and say, you'll get him next time. But Paul is the brutal, honest guy. Paul's the guy, he don't tell you, go get him, Tiger, we'll win the next one. He says that wasn't good enough, and maybe this isn't for you. So you're at your lowest ebb.
Called out commentators and then later on said, "Oh, I've changed my mind. I'm actually, and I agree, I was wrong." But he's got the totally different approach to that.
Yeah. So James was at his lowest point, because he'd finally got the big chance, and it had gone so horribly wrong. And instead of Paul, the guy who also he looks up to and is friends with, and has worked with down the years. He doesn't get a hand up. He gets a fucking knife under the ribs saying, look, this is a mercy killing. And that crushed James. It crushed him. And Paul didn't know that, because Paul doesn't know that, because Paul's empathy skills are lacking, right? But that doesn't mean he's not got any at all. It just means that he's a job first, results first, performance driven person. So ever since that point, obviously James was rightly upset. And he had it in his contract as well. And that led us to the situation where we're at, where, yeah, Paul's done a lot of, you know, he slipped and let his temper and emotions get the better of him on numerous occasions, a lot of which hasn't been talked about publicly. But I just got to say this, James, when you watch it, and you know I love you, and I didn't feel like saying it privately, but, like, you did say in your statement at the end when Redeye basically, he's gone. Like, I don't think he'll stay gone. And I've messaged Paul and I told him, don't stay gone. This is all workable, right? We'll get to the specifics about the assault stuff in a bit.
Yes.
But I told, and I agree with you. But I told Banks. Banks publicly said this wasn't like malicious or vindictive, and it wasn't like James.
Come on, mate.
I know.
You're laying it on a bit thick there.
Yeah, I gotta keep it real. The whole reason you did bring it, like, you were already in the ascendancy. In fact, I think what I said to James, and I don't want to. I'll only say what I said. I don't like bringing up people's private messages or whatever. But I said to James, right, you are now at the top of the mountain, and Paul is down here making his way down slowly, heading into retirement and old age, and, you know, maybe going behind the scenes. And to get back at him for something that happened years ago, you're going to jump off that mountain, knife in hand, spear in hand, so you can have a scrap with him down here. I said, you're fucking yourself up. I said, just leave it. So I don't know if when James was saying some journalists turned it down, he was talking about me. But my advice to James was, I don't think anyone wins this. I think it's mutually assured destruction. And that's what he went with, because he felt so strongly in his convictions and principles, which I have to admire him for, that Paul needed to be called out. There had to be some penance for his past actions.
I've got a few things to say on this one. Like, first of all, to pick up on the thread you've just said there, one thing that actually I found very disappointing is that wasn't it Redeye who himself showed logs where he apologized to Banks for exactly these incidents, and then Banks said basically, like, all right, apology accepted, you know, thanks for being the bigger man, something like that. Like, you can't then renege on that, mate. Like, he's apologized to you, you've accepted it. Like, I don't care what he's done. The second you agree to the apology, you have agreed that it's resolved. Like, you can't then later go, actually, I've changed my mind on that. I'm actually twice as annoyed as I was before now, so that no longer counts. Like, you shouldn't have accepted it then. Like, at the end of the day, if you want to be someone who has integrity and stands for something, those are the moments you've got to stand for it as well, mate, in private. Because another factor I have with this is also where the Luke Cotton guy was an absolute cretin. Like, the idea that he is literally blackmailing someone, saying, right, if you expose what my boss did, I'll show that you said a slur 10 years ago. First of all, that's literally blackmail, mate. And then secondly, what's the relevance? What is the relevance? Like, what about him saying a slur to you makes Redeye not have done the things he's claiming? It's the stupidest argument of all time. Again, all you're basically saying there is, again, mutually assured destruction. You come on me, I'll fire my nukes from my silo. You're not defending the guy at that point in time. In fact, the fact that you had no defense for what he'd done is itself pretty stupid. I'd have stayed out if I were you. But then I'd also add in as well, like, that in itself really didn't work well for me. If people notice, I've retweeted when I thought when I've looked. First of all, I've been very careful recently with any people's incidents that I've retweeted, because if I can't corroborate it, well, I don't want to put that person's opinion out there. So I tend to only put my opinion, my stamp on it, as it were, when I've myself been able to look into it, or maybe I've like got enough corroborating sides that it seems like this is legit. Actually, this is something that can go out there. So if you notice, I didn't retweet any of these posts. I didn't retweet Red Eyes. I didn't retweet James. And it's because I knew something like this was coming. The first one I could have retweeted. I was on board with the idea, for example, of outing like the physical violence. Like, if that really did happen, I'd heard rumors, but it's not something I've run down. I personally, behind the scenes, when he asked me about the story, just told him, it's not my story to say, mate. Like, that's why I suggested to him, what I would even do is go to journalists, give them all the information. If there's a real story, the ones that I know will run it down and they'll publish it. If there isn't a story, or it just cannot be said on a publication, then that you'll just have to make your own decision at that point in time. I didn't tell him to do it. I didn't tell him not to do it. Because again, like in the case of his stories, those are his stories to tell. In the case of the story of the guy who claims to be punched, that is that guy's story to tell. None of these stories are about me. So I'm not trying to go on one side or the other in this case. But one of the reasons I was hesitant to even retweet the first story is I knew this wouldn't be the end of it. I knew that both sides would scrap and claw for whatever they could. And exactly what happened in his follow-up to Red Eye is exactly what I didn't want to be a part of, which is I don't want to be a part of outing stories that are totally irrelevant to esports about people's private family scenarios in court cases that, again, I will stipulate, have nothing to do with esports. That is purely and that is literally the definition of a smear on someone's character. What you're saying is this. This person got accused of a crime, by the way, found not guilty. When they were accused of this crime, them being accused alone implies they're a bad person, therefore everything else I've said is correct. That is fucked up. I can't co-sign that whatsoever. That is, in fact, the behavior I don't want to exist in esports. I'm ashamed to be associated with that behavior in any context. So even though I also consider James Banks a friend, you fucked up massively on that one. You went way beyond the line of what's acceptable. And by the way, you owe Red Eye a personal apology for that. No matter what else happened in any other scenario, if you want to be a man of principle, and that's why you did this, you owe him an apology for outing that information about his family. At no point in time, by the way, because I noticed some sloppy sleight of hand was attempted where they implied, because Red Eye said there was no court case about him punching the guy, that means James Banks bringing forth a separate court case is in any way connected. It isn't. There is no connection to be found. It is not appropriate to bring that up. I also think, by the way, if indeed that individual came forwards and was a juror and said those things, based on what I've done cursory research on, he is in contempt of court. And I actually would literally suggest someone like Red Eye contact the police and have that guy punished. Like, again, there is no place in society for people who were jurors to come out and go, well, I disagree with the verdict, so here's the real boys. Here's what happened, and here's what, like, that is totally inappropriate. Again, what we're learning about these last few months is there are people out there, maybe even ties into the Fallen scenario, where if they don't think the current due process is acceptable, they were willing to burn everything to the ground and have everyone hung. And I think that is totally unacceptable behavior. It's not the world I want to live in, so I'll never participate in it. So even though I definitely think if Red Eye punched the guy, I think the person should have gone to the police. I think if that person wants to come forward with his story, totally legit. If James Banks wants to put
they have since.
Yeah, I saw that. If James Banks wants to put his own story out there, great. You can do that publicly. I would suggest, by the way, a great way to solve a lot of these problems that we've been having these last few months is, whether you do it public or not is one thing, but privately do it. If you know the people who work with that person, if you know the people who are in danger of having the same behavior happen to them, reach out to them privately, tell them what happened, and at a very minimum, you can sleep safe in the conscience that you did what you could in that regard. But I think this whole thing went from being what could have been a legit one-off case of showing something that someone did that was fucked up, and it became terrible on all sides. I also think Red Eye fucked up massively by denying it all, when some of it was obviously could be corroborated. Like, I think that was a mistake as well. I think that should have been a rare example of where a real, genuine apology would have helped.
Yeah, and just to kind of add a few little bits on that about James as well, because I don't want to make it look like we're disproportionately bashing on him. I think, like, these are the kind of like, look, listen, we've had a big moment across all of esports where we are purging ourselves of some genuine scum, and it's been long over fucking due. And I've been in the awkward position where I think, as I said in my article about, the Me Too movement that was going through esports, where I've had women and not just women, frankly, that have come to me and said, there've been people doing inappropriate things, that they're sexually inappropriate things, heinous acts of misconduct, and they've told me about it, and I've gone, well, let's fucking do something about it, and they've gone,
same.
I can't. I needed to unload. Will you be a friend and let me do that without bringing your journalism or connections or anything? And I've gone, of course I'll listen. Of course, like, you can talk to me about anything, and it's confidential.
Mate, some of the same people I've seen come out and say we must decry this behaviour and kick these people out are the same people where when I came to them with stories of women I knew, they would say, doesn't look like anything to me, and just go on with their fucking lives. The same people virtue signalling are the worst of the villains. That's always. Why, if anyone noticed, did anyone notice this trend? That some of the people who got outed themselves a week later, the week before, were the ones who were the first with the pitchfork and the rope to noose someone. Like, these people are outrageous how little they give a fuck.
Just happened again today, by the way.
They're so cynical.
Just happened again today with another streamer whose name I won't mention. I don't want to give cunts like that oxygen. But
by the way, I'll just say one thing about that topic, because generally I don't want to get into that whole topic. It's not a good scenario in general. But one thing I'll say is this. Like I just said about the banks example there. Listen, I don't always know. You have to make this decision for yourself, because there will be blowback, sometimes justified, sometimes unjustified, if you come out with these stories publicly. Some people are going to have cognitive dissonance, and they're going to like the guy in one way or like one thing about him, and they're going to attack you and say you're lying. That's going to happen, I'm afraid. There's nothing we can do about that. But one thing I would say is, don't believe this lie that there's two positions. One is you have to out it all publicly and go to the police and everything, or you have to stay totally silent and say nothing. If you come to people like me and Richard and you tell us a credible story and you give us leads as to where we can go, I can't say we can always get these things across the line. We're not fucking superheroes. We haven't got X-ray vision, look through walls and record people, what they're saying, etc. We can only go off what we can do. But I tell you what, we wouldn't sit and do nothing. And that's one of the things I think is so dirty about this topic, is loads of the people I see decrying it were the ones who did nothing. In fact, they were sometimes even complicit in these stories. Meanwhile, I have repeatedly put my fucking neck on the line behind the scenes to support people who were told, you can't work at Riot Career because you're gay, or you cannot work as a female colour commentator because we don't think a woman should have an authoritative voice. And when I've put my neck on the line repeatedly, the same fucking cunts that then told me there was no big deal and never pushed it forwards would call me out publicly for something like a stupid joke I made on Twitter. So I'm so sick of this attitude that we have to all stay mum, or we have to just put it all the dirty laundry out there. Like, there's a spectrum between there. And I would suggest people, depending on their case, take advantage of this, because there are good people in the scene. And just like that old saying, all it takes for like evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. That's the point. A lot of the people I know in the scene wouldn't do nothing, wouldn't turn a blind eye. But you've also got to trust that there are good people out there. And if you're willing to go out there, at a minimum, some of them will at least listen to your story. They'll at least pass that story around. They'll maybe say when a story comes up, like a woman's going to join a company, I'd watch out for this person. I can't corroborate it, but I've heard some bad stories about it. Like, we can at least give you like something between the two extremes.
Yeah, and well, it happened to me the other day, and again, I'm not going to name names, but somebody like publicly, it was very strange. They basically said that like Richard Lewis hasn't done anything about it, and they were talking about their own unfortunate experiences they've had where they've said they've been the victim of sexual harassment, and I understand the anger, I share the anger. So I don't mind that you're unloading and your target's a little bit off and you're going at me and you're going...
It's called transference. People can look it up when you get into another psychological concept. If you understand, actually, you can be very compassionate to these people.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, obviously, when that person's had some time like process, if you want to sit down and we can go after these people, of course, like, no one will be fucking spared. Not for that. That's a fucking... I can't even say on Twitch how we used to deal with stuff like that where I can't talk about it because it is a fucking anathema. It is an abomination. Even holding on to it to be a good friend to my colleagues just so they can get a bit of relief by talking about it, makes me feel bad.
By the way, that reminds me.
But you carry that weight because you care about these people.
I should have said this earlier. The part I didn't make clear enough is another reason why you come to us if you have some of these stories. If you know us, I would clarify that. If you're someone who doesn't know me, it's going to be hard for me to look into your case. And again, I'll have to trust your friends at that point in time. If I know you, though, you're an acquaintance in esports and you have one of these stories, another way we can deal with it, which might not even work in the cancel culture world, by the way, is if we have this information and we can corroborate that it's a legit story, like you've got people who witnessed it, you're a trustworthy individual, you have no reason to lie, we can also privately do Game of Thrones type moves where we get that person removed from that position. And listen, again, it's not up to me to decide whether they should be tarred and feathered and wrecked in court. So that's for you to decide. But in this kind of a scenario, there are more ways to skin a cat than one. Like, I've done this myself. There have been people in the industry who love to get people cancelled, but they themselves have tweets where they've said slurs. So here's what I've done. I go to a person who works with them and I say to them, I have this information. I haven't publicized it. I don't plan to publicize it if everything goes great. But you're a company that comes out and says that you support certain initiatives, that you're against certain things being said. So now that I've shown you this evidence, are you going to take action? And if people would be amazed how many times these companies will actually say, like, just let us take care of it internally, and they'll have that person removed, or they'll have that person punished, or they'll even say, we'll make sure that person never tweets anything like that again. Like, again, there are more ways to deal with this than the nuclear option.
Yeah. So the reason I'm talking about that is because obviously it was everything that was going on at the time, sort of culturally, that made James feel comfortable kind of coming out and talking about it. We had a purge. We got a lot of bad actors and a lot of bad people out of the scene for doing unforgivable things. And a lot of them, you'll notice, they either didn't even bother to defend themselves at all, or even sort of copped to it, oblivious of the severity. Like, this is what I mean. People say, like, oh, Richard's going to be all against that cancel culture and that. Not for that. Not if you've done something like that. What the fuck? Like what? I'm going to stand with the fucking rapists and the abusers and go, well, let's say both sides. No fucking chance, mate. I want to hear if you're innocent or not. I'll give you due if you're going to admit it and go, yeah, well, I'm not proud of the fucking sex crime I committed for you. What the fuck, mate? I wouldn't. Why are you even still here? What the fuck are you tweeting about? I don't want some sort of mad, like, head trip about why you did one of the most unforgivable things to another human being. Nah, you got to get got. And a lot of these people, as they're going out the door, they're like shedding a little tear for their own careers. And it's like, mate, you should be in prison. Don't you realize you have got away with it? You got away with it.
They got away with it, exactly. Yeah.
They don't get it. It's fucking mental. So anyway, like, here's to come on to the question you asked. I know why banks did this, but like, one of the things that makes me sad for both of them is that we're now sort of talking about Redeye with that raft of people who went, and that's not who he is.
No, that should never be conflated.
No, and I'm worried over time it might get conflated because, as we talked about earlier in the show, people don't always remember things right. And so the timing weren't great, but I understood why banks felt it was the moment because we were having the purge. Now, the question you asked was, is being an arsehole enough to get you cancelled, get you cast out of the scene? And I'll say that in general, in my experience, these problems fix themselves. So many people out there will say, Richard Lewis is an arsehole, right? I myself say, yeah, I'm an arsehole. It's just such a low standard of thing to cop to. Like what else am I going to say? Like, what? No, everybody loves me. I'm fucking great. I'm Mother Teresa. Be wary of anyone who says that about themselves, by the way, because they're usually like the fucking kiddie snatcher out of fucking Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory or whatever fucking movie. They're doing some fucking mad shit, right? Anybody who puts themselves up for sainthood is a fucking demon in disguise. Not me, never me. I'm human, I'm flawed, I'm fallible, I've done some bad things. I don't think I've ever done anything too heinous. Generally, my morals and principles won't allow it. But I'm going to slip. I'm going to have some transgressions. I'm going to fuck up. I might be a bit of a dinosaur. I might not be aligned with current cultural standards. I try and be as progressive in my thinking as I can. But in general, if you fuck with me, if you poke the bear, I'm gonna growl at you at best, and I might even lash out with my claws. I can't help it. It's how I'm wired. I've tried to calm. I've got better over time, but it's just who I am. But being an arsehole, fucking hell. Like, is Redeye an arsehole? Of course he's an arsehole. If he was sat there talking to us now, talking about AliceTV, he was an arsehole. The problem you've got is, for me, these things usually get dealt with internally. People get, like, you just don't get hired if you're an arsehole, right? Because no one wants to work with an arsehole. So it resolves itself. It's not that, you know, no one in the world will work with you, but the people who know you're an arsehole just won't. If they're in a hiring decision,
precedes you, as they say. Exactly.
Yeah, and usually you have to have some phenomenal amount of talent to get away with being an arsehole. And maybe Redeye's one of those guys. And then in which case, everyone on the show goes, he's a fucking arsehole. You know, the day 9 effect, I call it. He's an arsehole. We all know he's an arsehole. But there really is no show if he's not there. So you just put up with his diva bullshit and you just get on with it. So that's just how you live. So these things generally resolve themselves. Now, the issue that is almost unforgivable is that, you know, now we've got this assault thing that's out there. And I think if you've done an event and you physically assaulted someone, which, keep in mind, by the way,
in the industry, which is the key angle.
Yeah. Well, no, not even that. Yeah. I mean, sure, in the industry, but also as well, if you're a violent person, maybe there's a safety concern. I might even be willing to go that far. With people are going to say I'm a hypocrite here because of the Loader incident. People will never understand that I was acting in self-defense. They'll never accept it. It hurts their brains too much. But just so people know, under most definitions of common assault across European countries and in America, you only have to feel threatened to be a victim of assault. Yes. And I felt threatened, and therefore I was the victim. There's
all
a reason.
signs pointed that this guy was going to physically assault you.
Yes.
I could make a whole timeline and show people.
And you'll also notice that even though I never really played the victim card, in fact, one of the things I did stupidly after it all went down, there was a small enclave of friends, like even people who worked at Twitch and stuff, who were just laughing about it, going, Loader's a dickhead, and you absolutely sat him and clowned him. And I played up to that a little bit and talked about how I used to do boxing. And I think I even went on a show with Chamman and Destiny and basically said, oh, yeah, I put him to sleep and stuff like this. And of course, none of that's true. So I did play up to it a little bit. I told a few lies and embellished a little bit of the story to get some sort of macho clout or something like that. Pathetic, but we're all human. But the reality is that I was not the aggressor. I didn't want to hit or hurt anybody. I felt threatened. Someone had invaded my personal space, and I pushed them away to prevent them doing that, and then everybody lost their minds. That's the truth. That's the whole truth. Duncan was there. Sam was there. You'll notice Tosspot was there. You'll notice these people are never interviewed or asked what happened, by the way. When everyone came out of the talent room, because they could hear Loader shouting and screaming and started going, what's happening over here? And they were like, 5-10 meters away from it. And so I acted in self-defense. I've apologized for it. It probably wasn't necessarily. My brain probably had misinterpreted what was actually going on. But
cultural differences as well,
Yeah, all sorts of. Yeah, exactly. My upbringing not the best, so I apologize. Of course I do. Probably wanted to sit down and have a fucking loud Swedish talk about it. He probably wasn't going to hit me, but I didn't know, so I erred on the side of caution for a bunch of reasons. That is self-defense. It will always be self-defense. If as in the story that the person Redeye supposedly assaulted said, he had an argument with him over something to do with work and then punched him 3 times, I won't co-sign that behavior. Yeah, I can't. So, and I don't know if it's true, but let's look at the balance of evidence. At the time I heard the story, Redeye did indeed go on gardening leave after that. And again, I'm sure he was going through a very stressful time, because that is completely out of character for Paul. I will also add that. I've never seen him get physical with anybody before. I've never even had cause to think he would do it. I've seen him, and me and him have been out. We've had a drink. We've had an argument. We've worked in unbelievable stressful conditions, as I just told you about. Never seen him get physical ever before. I don't know if it's in his nature. If it is, I have never seen evidence of it. But that doesn't mean he didn't do it, because we all have a breaking point and we can all act out of character at some times. So if he did do that, and did get fired for that. And it was an in-industry thing. And actually, the guy who was the victim of the assault, for maybe even reasons of power dynamics, didn't go to the police. It's really bad. It's bad. And I'm not going to defend people for doing that. I myself, and I don't know if there is another chance that you then give to people.
It would be inappropriate for you to be in any kind of a position of power on a broadcast in esports, again, if that's the case.
Yeah. Now, it's reminiscent, because I don't watch Top Gear, but a lot of people said, well, didn't Jeremy Clarkson punch
when they claim he punched
runner
the guy over the sandwich or some shit, right?
Yeah, because he didn't have the right food from or something. No, I don't
that.
watch, and I think Jeremy Clarkson's a fucking cunt at the best of the times anyway. He's not my kind of dude. But he was allowed to keep working the show. There was very little repercussions apart from the shame publicly. I don't know what's appropriate with this. I don't like the idea of casting someone that has given so much to esports, literally written the book on esports now. I don't know if it's worth casting somebody who's that valuable to our industry into the abyss, someone who is that good at their job, someone that has so much tenure and understanding and has given so much to so many people. The week before all the bank stuff come out, there were people literally praising Paul for having helped them through periods of depression, having given them opportunities, having coached them to be better at their jobs. This is such a nuanced and complicated issue. I don't know what the right answer is. All I can say, and I'd say if Paul was here, and I love him dearly, and I hope he's going to be all right, but I would just say, like, I don't think it's appropriate for him to hold maybe like managerial positions, be around broadcast talent, be in a powerful situation again in esports. Now, would I work with him on a broadcast again? Yeah, I'll be honest, I would. I don't feel threatened by him. I don't think he's a violent man, but that's a decision I would make. And
my
if
issue is this,
went the other way on it, I wouldn't blame them.
If you notice, one of the areas I was willing to give him leeway on other things is that I know he has himself reflected on them without prompting and apologized and made it right. This is one problem I have with that incident particularly, which is why did he pick that as the hill to die on? Because he denied completely that fight ever happened. Now, again, I don't know if it did or not. I'll just say that at this point, there are so many people willing to give their case, privately at least, that it would just be a massive conspiracy if it didn't. I'll just say that. That's probably the best way to say it. Like, a lot of people who, never mind that whole angle, because I hate that angle. Like, why would he lie? Like, I can't read someone's fucking mind. I'll just say this. Like, it would be very bizarre that a lot of people privately would say the story, but then none of them would ever themselves pull the trigger on it if it was fake. That's what I would say is, like, in the balance of all things. So I will just say the reason I think it would be inappropriate for him to be on a broadcast is because he didn't own to this one. If that really happened, just like the other incidents, you should have just owned it up. You should have just said, you know what, I apologize for that. Even if it didn't come out publicly, that did happen. I would even make all the case you're saying. It was out of character for me. I'm ashamed of it. Here's something I'm going to do to overcome it. Like, I'm going to go see a therapist about my anger issue. Whatever the angle is, I agree. You can rehabilitate these people. These aren't murderers we're talking about. These aren't people who've gone beyond the limits of what's allowed in culture. In fact, I would even say a part of having a society involves necessitating a way for these people to be incentivized to correct their behavior and be productive members of society again, you know.
Yeah, and with that in mind, like, I'll also just add, for a little bit of additional context, we have ignored repeatedly, there have been incidents, we know about them, some of them come out recently, where certain people have been punched at events. It's been player on player or player on entourage. We know as well that sometimes on a broadcast, things can get heated. It's live TV, hot, We've seen people have flare-ups and square-ups. And we were all like, lads, we've all had a drink, like, just fucking chill the fuck out. Let's just do the show and we'll sort this out at the end. What's happened there, if it has indeed happened at all, and it looks like it has, is it's one of those that's gone too far. And I think, unfortunately, whether you want to call it toxic masculinity or whatever label you want to apply to it, sometimes that's going to happen when tempers are up there and flared between guys, and it's not good and it's illegal. There should be consequences. But I don't know. I'm just saying, if Paul does come back to esports in a broadcast capacity, I'd have no problems working with him at all. I think while I understand the grievance and completely condemn his behaviour in that incident, my experience is Paul is a very flawed human being, like a lot of us in this industry are, who wants the best for this industry and has given over an unreasonable amount of his own life and soul to this industry succeed.
A legitimate legend, by the way. If you want any category, I've said this myself in spite of my own incidents. These, you know what? I'll give a good example to show the olive branch I'm putting out here. So obviously everyone knows recently Sir Scoots was a massive arsehole to me on a number of different occasions. So I'll just say this. I still would put him as like a first ballot Hall of Fame figure for esports. Like, you cannot deny the things they have done. You do not rate this. That's the thing about really, that gets to the crux of what people don't like about the idea of cancel culture, is that the people who push it want you to believe that the one thing they're bringing up cancels everything else you ever did. I go the other way. I say all of it counts. So you know what? Your sins count and all the great things you did count as well. And that might be controversial to some people, but that's something that another sentiment I despise about what I'm seeing in this industry now. The idea that when someone's a legendary figure, put it this way, Redeye would be in the Hall of Fame just for the stuff you've seen on camera. Forget all the stuff off camera. Just as a broadcast talent, he'd be a Hall of Famer. So like the idea that like, because this is another sentiment you'll often see, and this is a clue, by the way. This is a tell, guys, that the person saying it is not genuine and knows nothing about esports. They will say, even if he did do a lot of good, by the way, any sentence that starts like that is going to be absolutely cuntish at the end. Even if he did save 10 kids from a fire, didn't he one time not pay his tax? You know, like, it's already the worst sentence ever constructed. But anyway, they'll go, even if he did do a lot of good, why can't we just hire people who are just as good, who haven't done all that? You don't know what you're talking about in this industry. If you think there's 50 people out there with the ability and the experience and track record of Redeye, who also just didn't do the couple of crimes you know about, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You are literally talking about your ass. People like Redeye, obviously, some of the other people who got recently done in some of the Me Too stuff, for what they did in their jobs, some of these people were legendary. Now, certainly, that doesn't mean that their crimes get wiped away. I'm telling you, I'm not going the other way on that one. But you also cannot ignore what they actually did contribute to the industry.
So look, I've just realised, man, we've already done over 2 hours.
All right.
And we've still got the viewer question to do. So since we know my internet can kind of roughly hold out.
All
by
right.
the way, as well, for whatever reason, I've got like a fucking Yeti mic, which, you know, that's all I could fit in my bag when I came over. So it has been doing this thing on the YouTube videos, right? It has this like mad like spike. I don't know if it's been doing it
All right.
while we've been.
I haven't heard it on this call.
All right, okay. It might just be XSplit it's interfering with. So apologies for that. But let's do another one of these early next week.
Yeah, all right.
If we can, if you've got the time. And we'll do the CSPPA stuff, and there's a bunch of other stuff.
There's some good stories still.
Yeah, well, an event. We had the summit as well, so a bunch of stuff. So just so we can get through the viewer questions, and it's not like a 4-hour show, you know. All right, so let's, as people will know, we have a Patreon for this. If you want to become a patron and give some money, it comes with huge benefits. You get respect in the Discord. Sometimes they just make you a moderator because, you know, nothing's ever gone wrong with power being exchanged for money. But you can sign up to it, and you know, as long as we keep above a certain threshold, we'll keep doing the show. We basically see the amount you donate as the barometer of interest in the show, and that's what brought us back from the dead. So we do have a bunch of people who pay $50 or more, and they get to ask a question, and we answer them. It can be about anything whatsoever, not just esports. So AliceTheAlchemist says, "Hey Rich, I don't know if this is a sensitive topic to talk about, but what were some of your fondest memories while working at Turner? And realistically, how long would you have continued there working for the esports program had it not been undeservedly cut way short by the crazies?" So, I mean, listen, I miss all the Turner guys. Like, it might be a bit weird for Duncan because Duncan's relationship wasn't the best with some of them, and rightly so. He had genuine grievances, going right the way back to his initial hiring. But like Turner was kind of the first time it felt like but put it this way, this is why I can never be disloyal to those guys. They still hired me after all the load of shit. And people were still trying to go after my career. They picked me up after that and put me on American television. That'll always be the height that I'll be most proud of having achieved, being a council estate kid from the UK to being on American cable network television. Don't matter if it was 2.5 years. And I think the majors we did and the work we did, I'm really, really proud of it. But more than that, You know, there was guys behind the scenes that people don't know, like Gen 4, who did our social media. Obviously, Christina, who you never even saw publicly. Ben Spitalnik, who handles all the fucking talent. Like, I'm missing out a ton of names. Leo, who came from the like. There was a bump who's no longer there. Like there was a group of people there. It was just a joy to work with every day, and I would go down on days off and just sit in the studio and hang out. But I've probably talked about it before. Two best memories. I mean, is like first of all the Shaq thing when I was renegotiating my contract, which I didn't sign for. Shaq taking the time, as we just did that charity show together. Shaq actually coming into the green room while I was sat there, because he was filming over in the studio across from us, and he came in and said that he'd heard my contract was up for grabs, and to make sure I got my paper, because that was the best thing about the show, and giving me a fucking fist bump. That was pretty good. But also as well, one of the things that I learned a lot about, and just how to become a better human being, was probably watching Ernie Johnson. Watching him was great. Like he was always in the office when you got in there in the morning, he'd already be in making his notes for the show, and he took so much time to come in and not just give me pointers like in some sort of arrogant or aloof fashion, because he's a legend, so you would expect him maybe to be a little bit like that. Not at all. This is a guy who is as good as anybody would see. As the persona you see on screen completely matches who he is privately, but also just giving me reassurance. Because I'd said many times, like early on in the show, I was like, I don't belong on American TV. Like, I'm not good enough for TV. And Ernie had heard me say that, and he came in and he said, Richard, like, you're a good broadcast journalist. You could stay at this network for many, many years if you wanted to, and do mainstream sports news. He said, like, you're good at what you do, and you got to have faith in yourself. And if you tweak this and tweak that, and he was like a super supportive guy, and you know, a legend in the industry, taking time to help make me better. And then I think finally, it's not like a pleasant memory, but it was a sign of the level of trust. I don't know if people know who Craig Sager is. I know you do, obviously. Well, Craig Sager was like a beloved member of the broadcast team, and you know, died after a battle with cancer. And everyone was really devastated in the studio. You know, he was part of the furniture there. He knew everyone. And everyone was crying, you know, when we came in to do the E-League show. Yeah, I think it was like the day after, or it was very close to. And the way it worked at E-League was, in Turner, everyone worked on all the other shows. We had guys that like worked on the basketball show, the baseball shows, and then they would do E-League. So everyone knew everyone. And everyone was devastated. I mean, floods of tears, men, women. It was, and we got to do the show, and a guy who knew Craig personally, or worked with him for like 15, 20 years, came out and slipped me a piece of paper and said, "You're going to read his obituary and on tonight's show." And I was like, "Oh, mate, I'm so far from this. Like, maybe we could, like, have we got time to record? Like, it should be you guys." And they were just like, you know, you're part of the family. He was part of the family. So, you know, it's your pain too. You know, you gotta read the obituary. It's your show. You're the host, and he's family, even though you never met him. So it was a big responsibility to put on me, but it showed how much everyone at Turner cared about what we were doing. And when you were in the family, you know, they did treat you like that. It wasn't bullshit. So big responsibility, big pressure every day I was there. But yeah, I miss it. I think in a different world, had things not been the way they were with certain communities, and if I'd handled that pressure better, I'd still be there now. So it was just a great company to work for, great time in my life, probably the peak. It's probably where I peaked. It's probably the best thing I'll ever do. ReykjavikOnSteam. Will the team who knocks out mibr, if they get that far, the Rio Major, get paid hazard pay? Well, look, I'll bring you in for this, Duncan. It is looking increasingly likely. I just don't see a world where we even have a live event in Brazil in November. I just don't
No
see how
way.
they can.
There's no way.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: even if every other country opens their borders, like to get visas and to travel, etc., just from the outside, the optics are so bad on going to Brazil that, like, I know a bunch of people. I'll just tell you right now, I know people who are talented players who would say, "I don't want to go," and opt out, even if it was going to be held. Like, that's the level we're at right now. It's no longer a kid, like, because this isn't a joke. Like, this isn't a matter where it's like, whatever, I'll just pretend that's not the case. No, people are really concerned about what's going on right now. So, unfortunately, Valve couldn't have known this, but this is just the worst year ever to host a major in Brazil. Just is.
Yeah, and it's a shame that it's worked out the way it's worked out. Fuck this COVID stuff. I still can't believe what's happened and how bad it's got and how we're all just kind of like sort of going on with our like normal lives when we all know exactly what has occurred. It's insane. But yeah, I think it's impossible. In fact, all the talent, all the guys that we're talking to who are liable to be there, they're not. They know. Everyone knows. I think probably in the same way that we've seen with like ESL Cologne. It looks like we're going to do that online. I think now is the time. I think Valve need, instead of waiting, like Bolsonaro himself got fucking COVID the other day, and they have not dealt with that problem at all. And I think when we get to the end of the pandemic, which, make no bones about it, we're still in the thick of it now, no matter what the press want to tell you. I think when we get to the end of the pandemic, there's going to be a handful of countries we're going to look at and say, yeah, they probably handled that about as badly as you could. Brazil are going to be one of them. And I think the health risk and the situation, I think it's too much. I don't think you can, in good conscience, ask players from overseas to go to Brazil right now to compete and essentially risk their lives to play a game. It's not worth it. As great as the game is, as much as we all love it, it's not worth it. Life and death.
It's also just an inappropriate request to make. Like, at this point in time, you just got to let it go.
Yeah. So, yeah, and people are going to say, "Oh, Richard, listen, I'm out of the US now. I can criticize the US safely. They can't take away the visa. I no longer have or need." So, yeah, US has handled it badly. Sweden have handled it badly. Brazil, I'm not picking on Brazil by any means. But yeah, I think we need. I think Valve, for once in their lives, need to just let's get ahead in a good, healthy time. Let's not wait until fucking 1st of November and go, "Yeah, lads, well, we're not doing it." Let's decide now. And decide what the strategy is going to be moving forward. Because we've still got another regional qualifier to go. Like, so we're just wasting everyone's time. We're like just, picking everyone's ass. We don't even know, by the way, that we don't do it in November. There's no guarantee we're out of the woods in January either. I mean, we just don't know where it's going to go. So let's make a strategy now, and let's try and diminish the impact that it has on the rest of the calendar moving forward. SunMaidRaisins, how can average matchmaking UK players help the scene grow beyond a toxic mess?
He means the UK Spain specifically, I assume.
Yeah, I was gonna say, otherwise the answer is not at all. Not at all, you mad cunt. Thanks for the money. No, but I don't know. Didn't you do a video the other day talking about something? No, that was your trapped video I watched.
That was more about playing the game itself. No,
yeah. I did watch it.
I would say that on this particular topic, like, this actually ties into a lot of things that are going on in the world right now. Look internally, not externally. Like, I don't care if everyone in that server is calling you a cunt and blocking you and do all that stuff. Guess what? The moment you rage and you shoot the guy in the head and go, "Well, he was doing that to me," you're part of the problem now. So the only real way you're ever going to make meaningful societal change is when people themselves start to correct their own behavior. So, like, I notice myself, if I play League of Legends or CS, and I myself can deal in a more adult way with being frustrated, the same people who are frustrating me don't then themselves get part of the cycle and get even more triggered because I'm triggering them because they're triggering me. Like, I can see where I myself am part of the cycle. So I would say that's part of it. Like, we could have gotten rid of this years ago if the next generation of players had just said no to this sort of behavior. They'd have just said, right, actually, if the older generation are all going to be cunts and blocks out the scene, let's at least make a pact among each other. We won't call each other cheaters. We won't kick each other from teams when we leave a LAN. Like, there's one thing. Just basically in your own life, start to correct the behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think in general, like, there's a lot of issues with the UK scene. It is what it is. Like, but you can't let the environment you develop in sort of define you with its limited parameters. I think if we did that, you know, there's no Michael Jordan, is there? You know, there's no true greatness to be achieved. Yes, you might play in a toxic soup surrounded by arseholes. Doesn't have to define who you are or how you play the game. Doesn't even need. I mean, also as well. Let's look at how many players play in other regional servers and other games with higher pings, so that they handicap themselves and play against tougher opposition to get better. There's a million ways, but the UK scene in Counter-Strike's dead. In esports in general, very weird attitude. The average UK player. Talked about this a lot. The psychology is we want to be as good as we can without working as hard as we can, because we want to have a life and not look like a nerd, but also be the best. And those things don't compute in esports and never will. And until that attitude, that kind of cultural artifact left over from back when you could get away with that, until that's gone, UK is not going to produce anything meaningful across any esports, frankly. Jyse says, have you considered doing a By the Number live special from Amsterdam? Oh, fucking hell, what a mess this would be. By the Numbers live special from Amsterdam, now that Rich is moving back to the UK. Me, Sam, and Duncan live with like a fucking shit camera. I don't even know how it would work. I mean,
mate,
could
I'll
we
bring
just
the
film
gear,
ourselves
mate.
in
I
a
can
bar?
make that work easy.
I'll
Not the
bring
gear, gear. I mean the camera.
Oh,
gear.
right.
It needs to be
I was going to say,
yeah.
right, yeah. Okay, now.
Level of stuff, Sam.
Yeah. I'll bring the gear, and the camera.
It's not impossible we could do it if we could logistically all meet up.
I mean, the
I'm
problem
sure we could
got
find
is,
a place to film it as well.
The main issue is
problem-
this. There can't be live timestamps if we're all in the fucking room. You need someone to actually be operating it. So this is the issue, right? There'd have to be some gimmick to it to make it better. Like, for example, maybe it'd have a live audience and 30 people who were cool could come, and that way it would make it worth doing. Because you have to understand, even though you're all thinking it'd be hilarious, like, we'll all be high in Amsterdam, we're going to have to be even more careful about what we say in a way we can't even do on the normal show. So, bear in mind,
set up a delay button, to be fair.
Maybe that's the option then.
I could have a straight dump button. But then I'm going to have to be coherent enough to operate said dump button,
I mean... Well, you know that's not going to happen either, especially in Amsterdam.
So it's not impossible, but tricky, put it that way.
We could do, maybe we do that. Maybe we could do like some sort of weird fan meetup where people...
that's not a bad idea.
Maybe
we'll release the VOD later or something. It's not live. Yeah. Maybe it's a live experience if you come in person, but then it's delayed, like tape delays to when it comes out on the internet.
And obviously that's where we get
basically. There has to be a safety net for this one.
Obviously that's where we would be murdered, but... Whatever. What a way to go.
What a way to go. Exactly.
Yeah. So I'll figure it out. But me, I don't even smoke weed no more. It just gets on top of me immediately. Like Sam's seen it. I fucking can't. My lungs are shut. My brain just can't. You know, I used to be a massive stoner. I can't
just
even
get you that really
anymore
soft
now.
Space cake they sell to the tourists, mate. Barely even feel it.
It barely works.
Like you're getting fucked up, but really you're just having cake. Ideal.
Exactly.
Man, I don't even like eating it anymore because you say it barely works, but then you always get that. You
can just have a few beers or something and shout, exactly. Can't you?
Yeah.
The idea would be, listen, anyone who imagines we're doing Fear and Loathing in fucking Amsterdam, you're out your mind. Well, that will never happen. But we might have a couple of beverages and then just enjoy the game.
Unless we did Fear and Loathing and then we did it like the Trash Talk documentary me and Sam did in Cologne where we just chopped it together afterwards.
We need to do another one of those, man. I watched that back a few times and every time it's like, why am I so shit at holding the camera? This could have been so much better if it was in focus.
Anyway, point being, we'll edit it and then we'll all sign a waiver and we'll all be mates. Right, two more, I think. We've got Echo asks, how do you feel about each player on each team being able to buy any 2 grenades for free on each pistol round? Players still start with $800 and they can spend on anything, be it more nades, an upgraded pistol, or whatever else. I feel this might allow Ts to do more proper executes and CTs to do counter rushes better and overall bring more variety to pistol rounds. I mean, I can't think of a reason why it's terrible.
I could give you one. is he's suggesting a world in which we can all have like fucking like 1 billion nades. Well, on a piss round, you have no armor usually, so like you're gonna get a lot of like just nade kills. Like 5 nades are gonna go into like lower B on does 200 kill someone out. So
it's tough for me because I just don't want pistol rounds to.
I hate pistol rounds as well. That's why I think it should just be like you have to realize. I even hate in the NFL that they do the kickoff. I think why have that stupid variance, etc. Like where like I hate all that. Like I wish you just like we just took turns. I start with my offense, you go this long. Like, that to me, that's the best approach.
So most people seem to agree it's terrible. I don't know. I'm probably just looking at it from the perspective I'd just try anything just to revamp pistol rounds. Cause I just feel like there's such a coin flip right now. But 2 nades wouldn't really change that. So I don't know, Echo, mate. I think what we need to do is get rid of them. And you only have to buy pistols when you're ecoing, essentially, to save money. That would just be a better variant of Counter-Strike for me. RezChi, since you have both dabbled and followed StarCraft, Brood War, and StarCraft 2, do you guys have a favourite match to go back and watch? Why is the answer TVT, Siege Tank, Slow Crawl, Dropship battles? Well, I'll just put my cards on the table here. First of all, I never chimed with Brood War. I never really watched it. I was interested in the scene and the structure of the scene and what it meant for esports and what we could copy in the West. But I weren't really interested in the games. I had no interest in it. In fact, my sort of insertion into StarCraft in general was when that big match fixing scandal happened. And I wrote about it for kind of an audience that didn't understand StarCraft, and I did all the research then. But I'll be frank with you. At the time, I was active in going to events. I think we had one of the worst metas in StarCraft 2. It was, what was it, like Infesta fucking Broodlord or whatever the fuck they were called. When
in the Wings of Liberty, basically.
Yeah, and like a lot of the games were sort of drawn out.
Terrible.
Yeah, miserable experiences. So my secret was I tried to get into the game and tried to watch it, but I found it so boring. Even as a guy that had enjoyed playing real-time strategy at that time, I said to myself, you know what? I will remain the outsider, and that will be my gimmick. I will be the guy that can never talk intelligently about the games because literally I don't know, and therefore I will never be tempted to insert my opinion when I'm working with someone like Apollo or Todd, people who know the game inside out, and I make a fucking twat of myself by accident, like a lot of commentators in Dota, for example, do. You know you are. So I said I'll make it so that can never happen to me. And the gimmick will be I'll always ask the dumb questions. So I actually stopped watching the games. I couldn't tell you a favorite game, a favorite matchup. I could tell you a favorite moment. I could tell you things like that. But games, matchups, it was all bollocks to me. I deliberately kept myself out of it because it just wasn't my bag. It wasn't my cup of tea.
I would probably just say as a general one, like I wouldn't agree TVT. I always found that to be more of like the chess match. In my opinion, that was always what made a massive divide in esports between FPS and RTS is, listen, even Brood War, it just doesn't have the aesthetic pop. Like if I show you some sick micro, I have to explain for like 10 minutes why it's sick micro. Like it doesn't flash in the way that like a Counter-Strike headshot does. Like you just know that's sick when someone does it. So like in terms of watching it, it has to be something that's like just I know the context of. So I would say like I personally always thought TVZ was the best matchup in Brood War because like it tends to be more where like, but you have to have an amazing Zerg player to play it basically because in theory it's biased to the Terran. So as a result, Flash versus Jadong, probably the best matchup ever. Like these are the two best players. When they play it, the racial matchup doesn't even matter. It's just who's the better player on the day. So that's one of the things I liked about Brood War as a game. Much like CS 1.6, I feel like it's a game where if you really are the better player, most times you win. There's not as many random or variable elements.
J-Dubs. Every week, there's a new report about some CS organizer, team, or player being an asshole. Are there more assholes in the scene now, more than 5 to 10 years ago, given the influx of money in today's culture? Or have the assholes stayed the same? It's just the level of reporting that's changed. I'll go one better. I'll give you a perspective you might not have considered. I think there's less assholes. I think, honestly, there's less. Or people have, over time, matured and their behaviors become less and we feel more secure in our jobs and stuff. The reason it seems like there are more arseholes is because, first of all, we've got the mechanics and the machinery to call them out. Very easy to make something negative about someone go viral. But also as well, there's more impetus to do that because the rewards for doing it back in the day, like if you called a person out, it couldn't go viral because we didn't have social media or YouTube or anything like that. All it could do was mean that they didn't get hired for the next job. Now, that didn't mean you were likely to get hired. You had to literally do the same job as that person to even make it worth your while. So people just generally didn't bother. It was like we just sort of had an agreement, if you like, that unless it was something unbelievably heinous, if you were just an arsehole and you didn't get along, the scene was too small to really rock the boat. You'd capsize the whole thing. But I think now, I think it's quite telling that a lot of these people getting called out, often for behavior, and again, I'm just talking about the arseholes here, not the predators. Don't get me wrong. But, it's from stuff from years ago. Guy was a shitty teammate years ago. Guy cheated on his girlfriend 4 years ago. I don't care about none of that shit. You were a cunt to a teammate, whatever. Cheat on your girlfriend, whatever. I don't give a fuck. I don't know why people get up in arms about people cheating on their partners. I don't get it. I don't get why that's any of your business.
Especially in esports, for fuck's sake. The amount of you that are living in fucking glass houses is out of your mind.
I know.
Are you kidding me? Put it this way, just go ahead and assume most of them have cheated on their spouses if they're in esports. Even if their spouse was in the same fucking room at the same party, go ahead and assume if they went to the toilet, they just cheated on them. Like, it's fucking esports. Here's the thing, I would agree and disagree. Like, the way I agree, and I think it's kind of what you were saying there, is things were so bad in the industry back then that I do feel like it's like the same scenario. Like, why would you still be in the industry? Well, guess what? If you're people like me and Richard, maybe you had nowhere to go, or maybe it's something you were good at, or maybe you looked past it. But you know what? There were some people who were like, well, it's the one area I have power over people. So there were some really fucked up people who stayed in key positions back then. The area I'd agree with Richard is, I do think as conditions have improved, and actually what he said earlier, their reputation catches up to them. Why do you think Redeye isn't at the top of the industry now? Because people know these stories. Maybe not the one about beating the guy up, but about him being an arsehole. So guess what? He's not the guy who runs all of Counter-Strike for Valve and decides if me and Richard get hired to the event. So in some ways, some of the stories about him have already taken care of him. He is somewhat neutered and is now, like you say, he was already gradually transitioning clearly off camera and clearly into like, I'm the elder statesman type role. So the people like that, if they were considered assholes, but then they've been taken care of by the passage of time and by the people that they've fucked over getting themselves into positions where they can no longer fuck with them. But I would say, as a result, there's a lot more cool people generally that have come in because they came into a healthier scene. They came into a scene where it was a real job, where you could aspire to things, where you could actually do the job and not get wrecked by every person you worked with. You could have a reference that meant something when you went to a new company. One thing I would say is, again, you have to differentiate between arseholes and predators. There are way more predators now because there's just way more people, and there's now finally women and men. Before it was just all men, so there was just less of that shit in general because everyone wasn't at after parties. So again, as long as you make the distinction, I agree. I think there's less really bad arseholes in positions of power, personally.
Yeah, and that's why you're seeing it go off the way that it's been going off. Like it's a purge that's been long overdue. And then final question. There was
one thing I would just throw in is this. Let's not gaslight everyone again that these people getting called out and literally cancelled out their whole careers can then be spun to mean that gaming accepts it and that it's a totally ubiquitous thing that everyone's doing. Why would they be banned from the fucking scene then, you idiots? The very behavior. It's the same thing that used to happen with certain people back in the day where everyone would go, do you see all the abusive comments? That you mean the ones that are downvoted and everyone gets blocked from Reddit for saying it? What the fuck are you talking about? They are clearly not accepted. So the idea that it's the whole scene, it isn't. And in fact, I would say the strong response to these people shows that it is not accepted when it is known.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, the one criticism I think you could level at is maybe people don't turn over enough stones. Maybe you hear the rumors. Yeah, maybe you hear the rumors, and maybe, I think if you hear rumors, I think even if it's a member of talent that's ever worked for you and you're a tournament organizer, you have an obligation to every staff member to conduct your own investigation in your own time. And I know that hasn't been happening. So that's unforgivable. It's not on me as an individual, is it, to get the evidence to do? I mean, as a journalist, sure, but as an individual, it's not on me. Tournament organizers have a duty of care to everyone who attends, and I think our biggest failing has been for a long time, as we saw with some of the names that went, we'd all heard the rumors, and the TOs never looked into it. In fact, it's stomach turning to think I've worked alongside some of those people, or I've maybe said something positive about them on a broadcast, or maybe I've gone out and had drinks with people who are but to all intents and purposes, fucking sex criminals. It makes me feel fucking ill.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're a TO right now, let's not let's not rest on our laurels. If you've heard rumors, just spend some time. Put your HR. You've all got HR departments now.
Yes.
Fucking put someone to work on investigating this credibly. Reach out, gently ask people. Don't wait until they get the courage up to have a twit longer 2 years and they've maybe done it to 3 or 4 other people. Get ahead of this shit and get them the fuck out of the scene. Like, gone. That's one thing that is abominable, and you cannot have a debate about. It is disgusting. And then the final question, Watch Doge. Once this blows over, I presume, I mean, he means probably coronavirus, but everything that's happening in the world right now. Can we all head down to the Winchester for a beer with Rich, Thorin, and Sam? I'll tell you, now that I'm back in the UK, I've said it to a few people. I do want to get out and fucking see it. I just can't believe we're all still living that quarantine. Technically, I'm still in the danger zone for corona from traveling. I'm still in quarantine myself. I haven't been able to see none of my mates since I got back. But when it's over, because I've said it, if I do get coronavirus, I'm just dead instantly. I hope you all know that. No hydroxychloroquine or whatever it's called is going to get me out of the fucking hurt locker. I'm in about 5 danger groups. I'm dead instantly. I'll probably just jump off a building or something. Bombaclad! I'm just thinking, I'm out. I'm done. So I'm not really risking it right now. I'm not going out in public. I even when cunts come to my door to drop off packages or whatever, I'm wearing a mask, and gloves and that. I'm taking it mega serious. But once somebody says, yeah, chances are slim, and we're down to 2 cases a week, I'll say I want to go to Amsterdam. I want to go to Denmark and catch up with Anders and stuff like that. So even though he's thinner than me now,
yeah, that might not last. Don't give him credit for the whole project until it's completed. Yeah, I've seen a lot of buildings in 3/4 finished and they just left it at that. So decays. All I'm saying, Richard, is this too shall pass.
I hope so. Because I don't want to be the fat man in the Counter-Strike scene. I'm not. My self-esteem can't take that. So if you're in Counter-Strike and you're talent and you are thinner than me at the moment, can you go on a binge? Or can you gain 5 stone or something and just for a little bit? You can work it all off later, just so I can feel good.
I'll tell you the worst ones, Richard. I'll just say, I won't say the type of person, but there's a type of person in esports who's really thin. And then if you ever go on their Instagram stories, they're always like, I'm such a pig. I eat 2 pizzas by myself, but I never gain any weight. It's like, fuck you. Fuck everything you stand for.
I know. You made me sick. I know. I fucking look at a picture of carbs in its chemical form and I gain 20 pounds of fat and you can inhale 2 pizzas. It's just not fair, is it? Anyway, that's the end of the show. So shout out to the sponsors. .com. Go and support them, show them some love. Shout out to all our patrons. We're going to do a read now, and Sam's going to bring up a graphic. We got sent this from someone called Corey Applesauce. He sent me a bunch of these, and it's old, bald, fat, rich. So I've fucked him over there, haven't I? By growing my hair out and getting a tash and stuff. The tash and the beard's actually pretty accurate. And Duncan, going... actually looking sort of semi-happy, maybe a bit high, a bit mellow there. And it's just him saying butt pounder for some reason. So I'm going to shout out all. It's a request. We're going to shout out all the patrons now. Hang on, I'm trying to find it. So our $100 patrons. Jerky's Minion, Brent DeCourt, AliceTheAlchemist, ReykjavikOnSteam, Madams, and our $50 patrons, Christian Davison, Echo, RezChi, Miss Alcoholic, Sigo, Cathal, Jyse, Flacksmith, J Dubs, Benakagi, SunMaidRaisins, Tobias Bernasconi, Butt Pounder 420, Watch Doge, Carve, Colin Penny, Madsen, Adam Quayle, Zinged, Marcus Kiumpar, and Sard Sawar. Much love to all of you and anyone that chips in a buck or two. That was by the numbers. We're back. The internet actually barely dropped at any point. Yeah, didn't do too bad. So we will do another episode early next week. Me and Duncan will work that out now. And obviously until then, make sure you take care of yourselves. Peace.